R250. Changing Minds. The basic process of a Thetan is simply getting him to change his mind. Most Thetans fall below the level of mechanics. They have to be brought up to a point where they are not being handled by mechanics before they can simply change their considerations. If changing minds worked on any Thetan, it would then be the only process in Scientology. But it does not work on Thetans who are interiorized, since they are being other things than themselves. And when they start to change their minds, they are simply changing something else. When you have a Thetan exteriorized, all you have to do is ask him to change his mind. And unless he is still very badly burdened by mechanical considerations with which he is so thoroughly agreed that he cannot immediately change his mind, he will do so. This process can be used on a non-exteriorized Thetan, however, and on those who are uneasily exteriorized by having them stand in one place with an idea that they have to appear there and then change their minds and disappear there, or simply have them stand in one place until they change their mind and then go to another place and change their mind. This is actually done by moving the body around, as most auditing these days is done. The auditing commands for this would be: walk over to this spot, indicating a spot to the pre-clear. Now decide you have to appear there. Now change your mind and decide you have to disappear there. Now change your mind and decide you have to appear there, and so on. This can also be worked into opening procedure, R216, by having a pre-clear select a spot, then change his mind about the spot, select another spot, change his mind about that spot, and select another spot until he knows that he himself is changing his mind. When exteriorized, the Thetan can change his mind very easily on any subject simply when told to do so. Very often he does not realize that he can change the factors of his life around simply by changing his mind, and so has to be asked to do so by the auditor. A note of warning: this does not work on interiorized pre-clears with any great value. R251. Rising Scale Processing. This is one of the older processes of Scientology. It consists of the individual being asked to get whatever idea he can about the buttons of the chart of attitudes and then change his ideas upwards. Using this process, the entire endocrine system of the pre-clear has been altered for the better. The auditing commands would be dependent upon the chart of attitudes. The buttons of the chart of attitudes are: dead, survives; wrong, right; no responsibility, fully responsible; owns nothing, owns all; nobody, everyone; never, always; stopped, motion source; hallucination, truth; distrust, faith, trust; I know not, I know; full effect, cause; I am not, I am; lose, win; stop, start; identification, differences; had, being. The auditing commands involved in this process follow. How close can you come to trusting everybody? Now, do you have that idea? And when the pre-clear has, all right, shift that idea as high as you can toward trust. Do this many times with the pre-clear on one item of the list before going on to the next. R252. Unknowns. One of the liabilities of Dianetics was that it took all the data off the bank and left on the bank effort and unknown substances. Efforts and unknowns were not as is. One of the basic auditing commands of this is: give me some unknown incidents. The pre-clear, as he tries to do so, will immediately find known incidents turning up rapidly. He is as-ising unknownness. One of the best ways of using unknowns is with a group of separatenesses, R248, where the pre-clear is outside looking at other people. Have him get how much is unknown to each one of these people with the following auditing command: now find a person and put some unknowingness into him. Now find another person and put some unknowingness into him. A variation of this is: put unknownness of location into a person. Now another person, and so on. The reason why location is used is because it is part of the definition of stupidity, Axiom 38. One can also use time with the following command: put some unknown times into that person. Now put some unknown times into that person, and so on. Remember to always run the same auditing command over and over and over until a change has ceased to occur in the pre-clear. R253. Repair. A 4-star process. It seems rather obvious that we should handle repair as a process, since that is what we have been doing in Dianetics and Scientology. If a pre-clear can't himself repair, he gets some help, a doctor, a minister. If the auditor can't repair, he won't run processes to make the pre-clear well. Granting of beingness has repair as a major part of its sphere. The cycle of action of the MEST universe for this process could be create, repair, change, deteriorate, change, destroy. The auditing commands for this process are: what wouldn't you mind repairing? What wouldn't you mind letting others repair? What would you mind repairing? What would you mind others repairing? What don't you know how to repair? What don't others know how to repair? The above is the main process and should be heavily stressed. The communication lags are very long and the process must not be briefly run. Finish one command, reducing all lag by many times using it. Get the question answered every time. Use for hours. Other indicated questions are run by substituting the following for repair in the above question form: create, repair, change, deteriorate, destroy, or start, change, and stop, the factors of control. A specific group of processes which have been discovered to do a great deal for pre-clears consists of R253, repair, followed by R244, must and must not happen, followed by R243, fighting, followed by R242, pandeterminism. This series, run with the auditing commands as given, is enormously effective. A complete audit of a pre-clear in very bad condition could follow this plan: R216, opening procedure of 8C for several hours. R217, opening procedure by duplication for several hours. R220, use of problems and solutions, using the commands given in the last paragraph of that section. Then, R253, repair. R244, must and must not happen. R243, fighting. R242, pandeterminism. R239, conceiving something interesting as given in its last paragraphs. R254, flows. R255, importance. Used in this exact order, continuous and very wonderful changes can be made to occur in a pre-clear, even though he began the process as entirely psychotic. Many such routes could be designed, but this particular one happens to have been tested in this order on pre-clears and found workable. R254, flows. The processing of flows has several times been tested in Scientology, and each time it has been discovered that there were many pre-clears who could not handle them with the processes which have already been advanced. Therefore, the static and the object were concentrated upon and flows were avoided. However, R254 overcomes this past difficulty. This is a very splendid way to make a pre-clear change his considerations. But it should be run long enough to take away the somatics which it turns on, for the somatics which R254 turns on can be severe. The process is extremely simple to run, but must, like all other processes here, be run exactly as given to produce the desired result. It consists of having the pre-clear point out things which inhibit, enforce, and desire flows. The auditing commands would be as follows. Look around you and point out some things, one after the other, which inhibit flows. Now point out some more. Now point out some more. Then, look around you and point out some things which enforce flows. Now point out some more. Now point out some more. Now look around you and indicate some things which desire flows. Now point out some more. Now point out some more. Now look around you and point out some things which inhibit flows. Now point out some more. Now point out some more, and so on. If the pre-clear is indicating people, he will discover with some rapidity that people are enforcing and inhibiting flows. He will discover also that speech is a flow. He will discover also that the universe is built of these flows. The pre-clear should be permitted to discover these things for himself. He will find, for instance, that blackness forces a flow. If a pre-clear wishes to know what a flow is, point out to him that a light bulb is flowing light waves out into the room and that an object is reflecting them. This process is, of course, worked best as part of the group where the preclear is taken outside and made to point out people, R246, R247, R248, and actually belongs with that group. This is definitely a 4-star process. R255. Importance. This is a 5-star process. It might be a very bad thing to run this process immediately and at once upon a preclear, and an auditor should never begin with such a process on a case. Auditors today begin only with opening procedure of 8C and follow that with opening procedure by duplication, and ordinarily follow that with problems and solutions, and only then go off into processes as difficult as this process. Although this is a difficult process, it is not difficult to do. It is difficult because it produces such rapid change upon the preclear that he is liable to be left in some state where he considers all things unimportant, and is made, by the process, to be out of balance with the universe and his life and his environment. And if it were run on a preclear who was having a difficult time, without first running opening procedure of 8C and opening procedure by duplication, he would of course have a tendency to stop being audited, for he would be plunged into the unimportance of everything, including auditing. The keynote of importance is simply this: anything which is important is solid or big, and the more important a person believes himself to be, the bigger he is liable to get. Or the more important a person believes something to be, the more solid he is liable to make it. Anybody who believes that minds are important is liable to make them solid. Hence, we immediately get the type of bank which some people have with their solid facsimiles, and, in consequence, masses and ridges. We began to hit this a number of years ago when we discovered that whatever we validated became more prominent. I did not at that time know why this was, and have now discovered that it is because things which are considered important become more solid. This could also be called games processing, for we are handling here the most important part of importance, the fact that in order to have a game, there must be something important to defend, to have, to attack. There is no game unless one has some item which is important, for it would not be visible to anyone but himself if it were not solid. Important and solid can be considered to be, for our purposes, synonyms. The auditing commands which run this are very simple and are pursued for some time without change of command. First, tell me some things which are important. Tell me some more things which are important. Tell me some things which are important to other people. Tell me some more things which are important to other people, back and forth on this. Then, point out some things which are important. Point out some more things which are important. Point out some things which other people consider important. Point out some more things which other people consider important. Then, tell me some things which are unimportant. Tell me some more things which are unimportant. Tell me some things which are unimportant to other people. Tell me some more things which are unimportant to other people. Back and forth on this. Then, point out some things which are unimportant. Point out some more things which are unimportant. Point out some things which other people consider unimportant. Point out some more things which other people consider unimportant. In view of the fact that each consideration that something is important tends to add mass and each consideration that something is unimportant tends to detract mass, and in view of the fact that the consideration that something is important is the second postulate to the truth that it was unimportant, we discover the mechanism which causes minds to form large masses such as facsimiles and engrams. At first one considered his mind unimportant. Then he considered it important, and then again unimportant, and then again important. And this cyclic activity brings into existence the mind as mass, which is to say, creates the reactive mind. We occasionally discover people who are having considerable difficulty, and the wide-open case and the occluded case, with considerable energy mass, which they are calling their mind. They do their thinking by facsimiles. They do their behaving at the orders of the facsimile. This can be traced immediately to the consideration that the mind is important, unimportant, important, unimportant, important, unimportant in a repeating cycle. An indicated process to remedy this condition would be spot some spots, spot some more, etc., and spot some spots where others thought the mind was unimportant. Spot some more such spots, and so forth. Spot some spots where you thought the mind was important. Spot some more such spots, and so forth. Spot some spots where others thought the mind was important, etc. This sequence of commands should be run each one until the communication lag is flat, and then, as in all such sequences in this book, should be gone through again several times. A vital, if somewhat murderous process, very important to be run on Scientologists is spot some spots where you thought was unimportant. Some more, etc. Spot some spots where others thought was unimportant, etc. Spot some spots where you thought was important, etc. Spot some spots where others thought was important, etc. This crosses importance with conceiving a static, R240. Another indicated question is, what important things could you be? Give me some more important things you can be. And then, give me some important things you could do as a Thetan. Give me some more important things you could do as a Thetan. A general formula on importance would be to spot spots where the pre-clear considered everything on the no to mystery scale important, emphasizing words, sounds, sights, blackness, and energy. By running this process, you can expect a considerable regain of education on the part of the pre-clear. Almost all education has been hammered into the pre-clear as a terribly important activity. Actually, it will be as much use to him as it is considered casually. This accounts in some measure for the tremendous difference in the attitude toward education of one trained by casual and interested tutors and one trained between the millstones of the public school system with all the horrors of the examination for passing, and accounts for the complete failure on the part of universities to educate into existence a leadership class. The secret lies entirely in the fact that education is as effective as it is pleasant, unhurried, casual, and is as ineffective as it is stressed to be important. For example, giving arithmetic the category of something terribly important is to bring the student at length into possession of a solid lump of energy which, utterly useless to him, will lie there as arithmetic. This also accounts for the failure of the child genius. Generally, his parents consider his career so important that eventually his piano playing or painting will be an energy mass. He will be as good as, and as effective as, he can change his considerations. And one does not easily change his considerations in the face of such energy masses. Auditors have often wondered at the resistance of the pre-clear toward turning on sonic and Visio, and at the persistence of blackness. Here again we have a problem of importance. The deafer a person becomes, or the less sonic a person has, the more he tends to believe it is important for him to have this attribute. And of course, the less he has it, for the more solid it gets. Solidity could be said to be stupidity. Here also we have the tremendous stress as given in Book 1 on words. The more important instructions are, the more important words are. The more important speech becomes, as in general semantics, the more buried and therefore the more effective words become in the reactive bank. If you were to choose a single process out of importance, the one which would probably pay off best would be one which wasted words, accepted them, and desired them in brackets, and then which caused the pre-clear to spot all the spots where words were considered unimportant and words were considered important for himself and for others. We are looking at the master trick. A person is as well off as he is free and lacking in uncontrolled energy deposits. But these gather to the degree that certain facets of existence are stressed as important. R256. Games Processing. Games Processing 1954 is quite different than its predecessors, but the fundamentals are the same in Scientology as they have always been. The highest activity, action, or ambition is to have a game. A game requires that one create or have an opponent. The whole series, centering around fighting, is actually the lower range of games processing, which accounts for its tremendous effectiveness. Processing games directly, the first indicated process would be one taken from description processing, R234, which would as is certain undesirable characteristics. This would be done with the command, "Give me some games which are no fun." "Give me some more games which are no fun." Give me some more games which are no fun, until the apathy and antagonism toward games in general has been to a marked degree as-ised. As an opponent is an essential part of games, the processing of opponents in general produces interesting results in a case. We could simply improve the considerations of the pre-clear with regard to opponents by asking him, "What sort of opponents could you have?" and carrying this forward until all communication lag is gone. Or one could have the preclear waste, accept, and desire opponents, where the accepting is done by having him mock up an opponent and remedying his havingness for it. Another interesting process which produces excellent results is name some unromantic roles, name some more unromantic roles, and so forth. Name some romantic roles, name some more romantic roles, and so forth. Name some unromantic roles, name some more unromantic roles, and so forth, back and forth until the preclear has regained the ability to imagine some roles. Actually, he has been given roles by the motion pictures and television and his propaganda textbooks until he will only accept a role which is generally approved by the society as represented in fiction. This could be said to be an intentionally fictionalized society. Marriages quite often go to pieces simply because Jim Jones and Mary Smith did not get married. Jim Jones, posing as Alan Ladd, marries Mary Smith, posing as Lana Turner. And a fictional Alan Ladd married to a fictional Lana Turner is going to be disappointed. Whereas there is no reason under the sun why Jim Jones shouldn't be a good and interesting guy doing an interesting role, and why Mary Smith should not be doing a role herself as herself. For people are interesting to the degree that they can postulate and act into existence the roles required of them in life. The Bard of Stratford-on-Avon said that all the world's a stage, but didn't give us the process by which we could be players. Your preclear has been audience, and this process boots him out of being audience into being a player, which is more or less what the auditor is trying to do with the preclear. He can't have any games where everybody is being an audience and nobody is playing. The scarcity of roles which a person can actually occupy in this society is such that we commonly discover a preclear continuing to act out any role which he has been given in some school play which he found romantic. I know several preclears whose total difficulty is that they have never ceased to be the gangster they did so well in the high school production of Officer 666, or the prostitute they did so excellently in the college drama club production of Rain. A not recommended and rather dead-end process would be involved in asking the preclear for things worth fighting for, in that he can only postulate things worth fighting for, and in that he is so far down the scale on this, the process is a difficult one, but can be used. A preclear quite commonly has play and work nicely and neatly separated. The difference between play and work is that play is fun and work is no fun, in the common parlance, until today we have only work. In view of the fact that effort is stupidity, unless understood, working at trying to play is the general difficulty with people. Quite often a medical doctor will advise somebody to stop working so hard and start playing. The actual fact of it is, an executive quite commonly has his work as his only play, and really plays when he is working, and he has to work to play. And so the medical doctor has consigned him to some hard work by telling him he has to play. Thus we have an inversion. What kind of a game could you have? Give me some more games you could have, is a useful process. What would you have to have a game? Some more things you would have to have a game, carried forward, interspersed with an actual description from the preclear of each game he lists, is very effective. The following process ranks very high in effectiveness in all these procedures. What kind of a game could you have involving blank? In asking this question, the auditor points out some object in the immediate environment, and the preclear is made to describe what kind of a game he could have with that object. The auditor then points out another object in the environment and asks, what kind of a game could you have involving blank? It will soon be borne home to the preclear that he has been trying to play games with the absence of opponents, that he has hung on to most of the disasters that have happened to him in his life because they meant the loss of opponents. Here we find the child who has been raised alone dreaming up illusory opponents, and later on we discover him mocking up demons. Any time we walk into an insane asylum and discover somebody involved with a battle with demons, or who has a demon, or who has a guardian angel, or who has any one of these mythical assistants or opponents, we are looking at somebody who found opponents so scarce that he had to mock them up, and having mocked them up was unable to unmock them, for no new opponent came along. The reason war mobilizes everyone into action and speeds up production in a country is because a tangible opponent has been introduced and people will accept tangible opponents above illusory opponents. Man's activity in fighting himself Thetans' activities in fighting themselves all stem from this effort to play games in the absence of opponents. What kind of a game could you have involving blank should be run until the pre-clear is cognizant of everything he is doing with regard to opponents without ever mentioning opponents to him. R257. Processes. The processing of processes actually belongs to VIA R241. It is an intensely important thing to do. Cells, trees, the whole of life is engaged in working processes. Normally, they work them unconsciously. One of the methods of straightening out this fixation on processes is to have the pre-clear plan to do something very simple, such as move an ashtray. Have him plan it out in its entirety and then have him execute it exactly as he planned it. One does this many times with many objects. Another way of working this process is discover things in the environment which are using processes, and discover things in the environment for which you can invent processes. R258. Loss. The subject of loss is an entire study in itself. It is the subject of havingness as well. Loss results in degradation, memory failure, blackness, and what we used to call stuck on the track. So it is an important subject. Loss itself can occur only when the consideration that one wants, needs, has to have has occurred first. When one loses something important, one supplants it by dragging in energy deposits, facsimiles on himself. Here is the scale of substitutes acquired by reason of loss. The scale is also included in the audiobook directory. Cumulative spiral, stopped time. Object, loss. Subobject owned, loss. Subobject others, loss. Sub-mockup, loss. Sub-mockup owned, loss. Sub-mockup others, loss. Sub-problem, loss. Lost by solution, lost by occlusion. Sub-problem owned, loss. Sub-problems others, loss. Sub-blackness, something in it, loss. Sub-blackness owned, loss. Sub-blackness others, loss. Sub-unconsciousness, loss. Sub-unconsciousness, own, loss. Sub-unconsciousness others, loss. Sub-unconsciousness own, loss. Sub-unconsciousness, loss. Sub-blackness others, loss. Sub-blackness own. Hallucination. The remedy of havingness is a good process to overcome loss. However, loss is a consideration. The following processes remedy considerations involving havingness. What assistance do you need to survive? What assistance do others need to survive? The most effective straight wire on this is name some important possessions, some more, etc. Name some things it is important not to have. As we have havingness going down to ownership, then to protection, then to hiding, we have name some things it is important to protect. Name some things it is important to hide. Name some things it is important to display, exhibit. These are lower-level manifestations. Important possessions will exteriorize. R259. Survival. Whenever I have found a process unworkable in the past 16 years, I have found that the unworkable process avoided the dynamic principle of existence, survive. In other words, it did not greatly matter how this principle was embroidered. If it was included in the process or rationale, some workability resulted. The dynamic principle of existence, survive, and its application as the dynamics is easily the greatest discovery in Dianetics. Even when we add to it the remainder of the curve of the cycle of action of the meshed universe, create, survive, destroy, we find survive is the potent truth in it. So, Scientology or Dianetics, if we neglect survival in our rationale, processes become unworkable. Survive has as its dichotomy succumb. When one is below 2.0 on the tone scale, all survival looks evil to him. Live equals evil in the succumbing case. To punish is to declare a thing evil. To be evil is to refuse survival. The dynamics are a breakdown of the dynamic survival into 8 parts. Each dynamic in turn breaks down into many parts. Thus we have life, and these interplays of survival are life. If your pre-clear is not clear, he is avoiding survival on one or many dynamics. His considerations about survival are his personality. I tell you this lest we forget. Dianetics is a precision science. It stems from this study and codification of survival. Survival is the reason why. Opening procedure of 8C, R216, works because the pre-clear in spotting MEST is recognizing, look, after all I've been through, I've survived. Having a pre-clear spot in a crowd, people's survival potential is great processing. The auditing command, point out some things in your surroundings which aren't surviving, will spring grief or apathy. Point out some things which are surviving is quite potent. Point out some unknown methods of surviving is one of these fader questions. He can almost answer it for hours. As a Thetan is immortal, he cannot do other than survive. When he realizes this, his game may become, how can I succumb? Survival has pay. That pay is the sensation of pleasure. This is acquired by interest. One tries to survive by being interesting. He demands of life that he be interested. Thus, with the pre-clear in a crowd, what could that person, auditor indicating one, have, do, be that would be uninteresting? What could that person have, do, be that would be uninteresting to your ally? The pre-clear has as-is all the interest from life and has left intact uninteresting things. When he tries to get interested anew, uninteresting ridges soak up his interest. What dreams, goals would you find uninteresting is interest plus future equals survival. A murderous auditing command, while the pre-clear is outside looking at people and the world, is, what dreams could that person have that would not interest you? What dreams could that person have that would not interest your mother and other allies? Interest of allies makes survival possible. Anything which succeeds in interesting allies, orientation points and symbols, then may be a successful mock-up for the pre-clear all his life. Syphilis, fatness, stupidity may be interesting enough to allies to leave the pre-clear with them all his life. For an interested ally means future, and that is survival. Get a list of all people he has known since birth. Ask him for each one many times, what would be interesting to ally? And you'll find his service facsimile in the source of his aberrations and psychosomatics. What dynamic could you abandon could be used on a Scientologist. The most basic question about bodies being cellular organisms is, what wouldn't a cell survive? What else wouldn't a cell survive? And so on. This is a very old but very potent Dianetic process for the repair of bodies. Organs, body parts, and types of bodies can be substituted for cells in the above question. Remember, your goal is to improve the pre-clear's survival. If he thinks survival is evil, if to succumb is the only way he can get interest, your road will be eased by remembering and processing the dynamic principle of existence, survive, on all or any dynamic by any type of process. And this is the rationale of Dianetics, which may be freely used by a Scientologist. R260, the hidden communication. Spot some hidden knowingness is an auditing command which, pursued properly, opens the gates to freedom. In Scientology 88008, you will find a scale which begins at its lowest rung with hidden. Above that is protection. Above that is ownership. I have recently discovered that the DEI cycle and the above low scale join to make the scale read curiosity, desire, enforcement, inhibition, ownership, protection, hidden. And I have discovered that the road upward through this scale is communication. Knowingness condenses. Trying to know becomes the first level of communication. This looking to know condenses into emoting to know, which condenses into effort to know, which in turn becomes thinking to know, which then condenses into symbols to know, which, and this is the astonishing thing, becomes eating to know, which becomes sexual activity to know, which then turns into oblivion of knowing or mystery. An energy particle is a condensed knowingness. Trying to discover or move one is an action with the goal of knowingness. Gravity, grim thought, becomes in the mind and is the effort to know, to pull in knowingness. Other determinism is only other knowingness. The aspects of know are the common denominators of any scale in Scientology. When knowingness is done by communication, we get emotion and effort particles changing position. This struggle to know is not just me and thee working on Scientology and gone mad in the process. It is life and all its manifestations, including space, energy, matter, and time. Each is only a barrier to knowingness. A barrier is a barrier only in that it impedes knowingness. Barriers do not exist for complete knowingness. And what is there to know? Only that knowingness can vary. One has to invent things to know. For there is only knowingness, and knowingness has no data, since a datum is an invented, not a true knowingness. The motto of any particle below lookingness is, only energy can tell you. We handle R260, hidden communication, in this wise. Spot some hidden communications, and now spot some more hidden communications, and so forth. We may have to direct the pre-clear closely with, point to the spot. How far away does it seem? Are you spotting a hidden communication there? And such questions, meanwhile keeping good ARC. He could be asked to spot specific kinds of hidden communications, as with this command, spot some hidden disease communications, or some hidden poisonous communications, or spot some hidden but uninteresting communications. But use the question to flatten all communication lags before you change it. If he goes into the past, let him. He'll come back to the present. He'll find his chronic somatic and do many interesting things, including perhaps the data in the text of R260 here. It is curious that the above spot some hidden communications does not seem to require a remedy of havingness, but it will turn on many heavy ridges and somatics. Having thoroughly worked hidden communications, you can now use this command. Spot some protected communications. And when that is null, spot some owned communications. And after that has no communication lag, spot some inhibited, stopped communications. Then spot some enforced communications. And then spot some desired communications. Now, when all that is done, proceed as follows. Spot some hidden knowingness. Are you spotting it in the physical universe? If so, all right, point at it. How far away does it seem? Spot some more hidden knowingness, and so on, until after an hour or 2 or 6, this command is communication lag flat. Now start upscale as follows, making the pre-clear point and give the distance to the spot even when trillions of miles away. Spot some protected knowingness. And after many times of that, then, spot some protected knowingness, many times. Then, spot some owned knowingness, many times. Then, spot some inhibited knowingness. Then, spot some enforced knowingness. Then, spot some desired knowingness. Then, spot some knowingness that people could be curious about. In R260, Hidden Communication, we can use the No to Mystery scale. Spot some mysteries. Spot some hidden sex. Spot some hidden eating. Spot some hidden symbols. Spot some hidden thinking. Spot some hidden efforts. Spot some hidden emotions. Spot some hidden looking. Spot some hidden knowing. Then, spot some protected mysteries. Spot some protected sex, etc., etc. You can, using the principles of hidden knowing and communication, combine any other part of Scientology with them and discover an excellent process. However, the first commands given in R260 are the easiest to communicate and use. R261. Good and Evil. The factors of good and evil are the factors of accepting other determinism, good, and accepting or giving blows, evil. That which cooperates is good. That which is punished is evil. This is the totality of consideration involved. Good and evil are third dynamic phenomena, but unlike most words one might process, these have definite emotional connotations which, to the pre-clear, speak louder than the words. These apply from mystery up to know. Just as good and evil are the primary fixation of philosophy, so are they a primary fixation in a pre-clear. So confused are they in philosophy or in pre-clears that an enormous complexity results. Their resolution would resolve either philosophy or pre-clears. The basic auditing commands to handle this extremely important process are: spot a place where you decided to be good. Now spot a spot in this room. Spot the place again. Spot a spot in this room. Spot the spot again where you decided to be good. Spot a spot in this room, etc., until all communication lag is gone for one distant spot where the decision was made to be good. Then, now find another spot where you decided to be good. Spot a spot in this room, etc., and so on until many spots are cleared. Actually, the auditor wants the distant spot to come into present time before he leaves it, but at least reduce communication lag for each spot. Now do exactly the same procedure using the following auditing command. Spot a place where another person decided to be good. Now spot a spot in this room, alternating back and forth until communication lag is reduced. The same is now done for evil with this slight variation. Spot a spot where you decided you were evil. Spot a spot in this room. Spot the spot again where you decided you were evil. Spot a spot in this room, etc., as for good, picking out new single spots and clearing each one as far as possible. Then follow the same procedure with the command, spot a place where another person decided he was evil. Spot a spot in this room, etc., reducing communication lag for each spot. Then point out some unknown evils. Point out what other people would find an unknown evil. You may have to remedy havingness for the pre-clear, for this is very destructive of havingness. The pre-clear will come up with many considerations and changing ideas. Let him voice them, but continue with the process. Don't let your pre-clear leave the session with a good or evil spot uncleared or in restimulation. He will become neither saint nor devil from running this. He will become more capable of good action. R262. Overt Acts and Motivators. One of the primary discoveries in Dianetics was the overt act motivator phenomena. An overt act is a harmful act performed against another. A motivator is an overt act performed against oneself by another. If one receives a motivator, he then may consider himself licensed to perform an overt act against the person who harmed him. When one commits an overt act without having received a motivator, he attempts then to mock up or acquire a proper motivator or justify his own harmful action. An overt act delivered in the absence of a motivator we call an unmotivated act. A justifier is the technical term we apply to the mock-up or overt act demanded by a person guilty of an unmotivated act. In that a thetan cannot possibly, actually, be harmed, having no mass, wavelength, or actual location, any harmful act he performs is an unmotivated act. Thus, a thetan basically cannot have a motivator overt act sequence and always has an unmotivated act justifier sequence. The catch in this is the idea of harmful, good, and evil. An act must be considered harmful or evil to be an overt act. To need a justifier, a person must have believed his act to have been harmful. As the thetan cannot experience a motivator overt act sequence, we have then the dwindling spiral. He is always justifier hungry. Thus he punishes and restimulates himself. Thus he is always complaining about what others do to him. Thus he is a problem to himself. Only permit a thetan to get the idea that it is possible to harm others, and you have, then, the dwindling spiral. Use of these data in auditing is simple and intensely profitable. For example, we have a pre-clear who continually complains about his father, how mean his father was to him. This means precisely that the actual facts of the past include many unmotivated acts against father by the pre-clear, even though the pre-clear seems to recall no such acts by himself and many overt acts against himself from father. This is an excellent process to get a sudden result on a pre-clear. Ask him, straightwire, for things he has done to his mother, father, any and all allies. Don't let him run things they have done to him. Can you recall doing something to your father or other ally or person is the only auditing question. Having him remedy his havingness with motivators is also a fair process. R263. Accept, reject. From acceptance, we get a 10-star process. Whatever else you may do with the pre-clear, he must be brought to accept the physical universe and his own and other bodies, all in every kind of condition. The way out is the way through. In Eastern practices, the goal was abandonment, desertion. Scientology's main difference from Eastern practices is this: it accepts to free, and it frees. That which one cannot accept chains one. For instance, revulsion to sex inclines at last to slavery to sex. A ruler's motto could be, "Make them resist," and his people would become slaves. In 1870, we find capitalists resisting Marx. In 1933, we find Marx the basic text of U.S. government. Resistance and restraint are the barbed wire of this concentration camp. Accept the barbed wire and there is no camp. On test, this process exteriorizes the worst case if run long enough. This process is important because it is one of the few, like R216, which does not have alterisness as its operative factor. This is not then an altering process, confirming somatics and aberrations. It is a freeing process. That which one cannot accept, he cannot as is. The commands of this process are as follows. Find something about yourself which you can accept. Something else. Find something else you can accept, etc., until there is no communication lag. Then, find something about yourself you can reject. Find something else about yourself you can reject, etc., until there is no communication lag. Then, find something in this room you can accept. Something else. Find something else in this room you can accept, etc., Find something in this room you can reject. Find something else in this room you can reject, etc., Then, find something about this universe you can accept, until communication lag is flat. Then, find something in this universe you can reject. Remember, this is not an altering process. It is a high-value escape process. If your preclear keeps putting conditions of change into everything before he can accept them, you must persuade him to find things he can accept without changing them. R264. Touching. Most thetans are inside because they are afraid to touch the outside. A baby is slapped out of touching things with its hands by mama and the messed universe. Some thetans are afraid that if they touch messed, they'll stick to it and so remain safely inside. There are two possible ways to run this. One is simply, what are you willing to touch? The other is, as a thetan, what are you willing to touch? If the preclear no savvy, being a thetan, use the simpler form. The command is, as a thetan, what are you willing to touch? What else are you willing to touch? What else are you willing to touch, etc., Then, what are you willing to have touch you? What else are you willing to have touch you? The mind can change without bringing alterisness into play. Changing the mind is the only possible way to improve without liability. This process alters only the mind. This is a very valuable process. 8 stars. R265. Alteration. As any energy or space condition survives only because it has been and is being altered, the primary unmotivated act would be changing the condition of energy, space, and objects. The mind can change without liability. When a mind changes energy or space, we get a persistence of that energy or space. As persistence or survival is good and bad only to those who desire to succumb, we do not see in alteration of energy or space any crime. But when we alter only bad conditions of space and energy, we make the bad conditions persist. Hence it would be of value to a case to at least straight-wire out some of the times when he attempted to alter energy, spaces, or the bodies of people. To an auditor who works to exteriorize a preclear and change his mind, there is small liability and great personal advance. To an auditor who works only to change the body, the ridges, the somatics, there is failure, fixation of condition in the preclear, and restimulation. Successful auditing of the thetan actually improves the auditor. Failure is the biggest lock on alterisness, of course. The preclear who is obsessively trying to change himself by self-auditing or whatever means has failed many times to effect a change in the condition of this universe or in the bodies of others, or has the space and energy of this universe as a stable constant. The commands are, can you recall a time when you failed to change some energy in this universe, etc., And when this is flat, can you recall a time when you failed to change some space? Then, can you recall a time when you failed to change a body? This last is the one you stress. He may get nothing on the space question at all, but such incidents are in his recall, or space would not exist at all for him. Also, can you recall a time when you failed to change a memory, etc., Wherever or however the preclear is stuck in tone or condition, there he has failed to change something or somebody. This can also be run on the theta side of the ledger. Can you recall a time when you successfully changed something until the lag is flat? Even more simply, can you recall a time of change? R266, electing cause. Worry and anxiety have their root in the changing election of cause. People who elect cause other than self are often shifting responsibility and refusing to fix actual cause. The Black 5 is a no-responsibility case. This process is a brutal one, but it is a 5-star process. It often sets off a worry machine and runs it out. The auditing command is, point out some things which are causing things. Point out some more things which are causing things, etc., until the lag is flat. R267, objects. To a person who cannot hold the 2 back corners of the room, the simple location of objects is valuable. When a person is self-auditing, this is a very valuable solo process. The command is, locate some objects, etc. The person looks at them or puts his attention on them and notes what they are. This is all there is to the process. For variation, one locates some more objects. By object is meant physical universe present time visible objects. R268, incomprehensibility. A thetan is understanding. A space or mass is no understanding. A thetan is no mass. An object is mass. Duplication is then difficult. A thetan must be able to be a mass or a space and to experience at will incomprehensibility in order to see spaces and masses. It is a new understanding to understand that something can be incomprehensible. The tone scale is a study of varying degrees of ARC. ARC comprise understanding. With knowingness at the top of the scale, we come down in understanding, third dynamic knowingness, then down through relative understandings and increasing incomprehensibility until at bottom scale, MEST, we have total incomprehensibility and total non-comprehension. A difficult case is simply an incomprehensible case. The processing on this is done by the command spot something incomprehensible, repeated many, many times. This ups IQ and raises perception. This is a good process. R269. Please pass the object. This process was developed by a long-time auditor. It is a very fine process and is recommended anywhere on the scale. Throughout the process, the auditor doesn't say a word. He doesn't answer possible questions. He doesn't explain in words what he wants. Under all circumstances, he makes like the tar baby and don't say nothing. He uses any gestures necessary. Step 1. A. Auditor stands in front of preclear, holding out a small object to him until the preclear takes it from his hand. As soon as the preclear takes the object, the auditor holds out his hand, palm up, until the preclear places the object in his palm. The auditor immediately offers it to the preclear again. This is continued until without communication lag. The object should be offered to the preclear from a variety of positions, once he has gotten the idea, from down near the floor, far off to either side, over the preclear's head. The palm should be held in a variety of positions for the return of the object. Both hands may be used. Get the preclear doing this really fast. B. When step 1A is going swiftly and easily, the auditor introduces a switch. After the preclear has just accepted the article, the auditor, instead of extending his palm for its return, places his hands behind his back briefly, then conveys by gestures that the preclear is to offer the object to him. When the preclear does so, the auditor takes the object from his hand but does not return it until the preclear holds out his own hand, palm up, to receive it. This exchange is continued until the preclear is offering and accepting the object from as wide a variety of positions as the auditor used, and all other communication lags are flat. Step 2. The auditor, just having accepted the object, makes a gesture that this part is over, then deliberately puts the object down where the preclear can see it, stands back and indicates that the preclear is to pick it up. When the preclear picks it up, the auditor gestures that he is to put it down again anywhere he likes in the room. The instant the preclear does so, the auditor snatches it up and puts it somewhere else. This is continued until the auditor and preclear are racing around the room, seizing the object as soon as the other's fingers have let go of it. The object isn't necessarily placed in a different spot each time. It may be picked up and put down again in the same place, but it must be handled each time. All sorts of tacit rules and understandings will probably develop while this is being run. This process rehabilitates the sense of play, validates nonverbal ARC, short-circuits verbal machinery, lets the pre-clear position matter and energy in space and time, gets the pre-clear up to speed, murders there must be a reason for doing this, processes both auditor and pre-clear equally, and, besides, it's fun. R270, Expectance Level. This is a future-type acceptance level. The command is, what do you expect from blank, where the auditor fills the blank. It is a cousin of description processing, R234, not for low cases. R271, Answers. A relative of problems and solutions, R220 is, give me some answers, as a constantly repeated question. It is a valuable process. R272, Security Processing. It is safe to do what your parents do, and that is evolution. Death, failure, rejection are safe if your parents did them. The auditing commands are, tell me some things it is safe to be, etc. Tell me some things it is safe to do, etc. Tell me some things it is safe to have. This works very well. R273, Making Something for the Future. The auditing command is, point out some things which are making things for the future. This is a brutal process. R274, Processing, Self-Auditing. Reference, R257, Processes. The auditing command is, point out some things that are processing things. This cures obsessive self-auditing. R275, Knowingness. As everything is a condensation of knowingness, the following commands explain much and do much. Tell me something you wouldn't mind knowing. Something you wouldn't mind others knowing. Invent something to know. A 10-star process. R276, Communication Processing. Reference, Dianetics 55. The exact auditing commands to process communications are originated communications. Auditor, have somebody out there indicating a spot in the air start saying hello to you. The pre-clear does so, is himself silent. When the process is long run, auditor, start saying hello to a live spot out there. The pre-clear aloud or as himself does so. Answers. Auditor, have a spot out there start saying okay to you. The pre-clear does this many times. Auditor, start saying okay to a spot out there. Acknowledgements. Auditor, have a spot out there start saying, I did it. When the pre-clear has, many times, auditor, start saying, I did it to a spot out there. The command that turns on a somatic repeated often enough will turn it off. When in doubt, remedy having this. The basic communication command is, what wouldn't you mind communicating with, in brackets. R277, Games. Reference, Dianetics 55. The basis for this process is the observation that the MEST universe is a game. One can have a game and know it. He can be in a game and not know it. The difference is his determinism. Games require space and havingness. A game requires other players. Games also require skill and knowingness that they are games. Havingness is the need to have terminals and things to play for and on. When a game is done, the player keeps around tokens. These are hopes the game will start again. When that hope is dead, the token, the terminal, is hidden. And it becomes an automaticity, a game going on below the level of knowingness. Truthfully, one never stops playing a game once started. He plays old games in secret, even from himself, while playing or not playing new ones. The only real game one can have is in present time. All others are in the past or the future. Anxiety for a game takes one into the past. The command is, invent a game. And when the pre-clear has, again, invent a game. Then, have somebody else invent a game. Having established the fact that an auditing session is in progress and established some slight communication with the pre-clear, the auditor says, invent a game. When the communication lag on this is flat, the auditor then uses the command, "Have somebody else invent a game." This is the only phrase he utters, but he, of course, engages in two-way communication with the pre-clear when the pre-clear has something to say to him. An auditor has to be a good auditor in order to use this process. Just because it is a simple one-command process is no reason why it will work for an auditor who is not cognizant with the auditor's code, cognizant of a two-way communication, and hasn't some experience in more basic levels of processing. We use this process as a remedy for the scarcity of games, and we use it in full awareness of the processes involved in two-way communication. It is a murderous process and requires 5 or 10 hours, in rough cases, to bring about an understanding of existence. This is not necessarily a recommended process. It is a workable process. It does function. It is fast. But remember that it has the frailty of the ability of the auditor himself. It has the frailty of failing when a two-way communication is not maintained with the pre-clear. It will fail if the pre-clear, in volunteering information, finds no attention from the auditor. It will fail if the auditor does not acknowledge the fact that the pre-clear has done this. But if these things are considered, it will work. This process can be abused by the pre-clear. He can wander from it. He can sit there in the auditing chair doing other things. But we depend upon the skill of the auditor to see that the pre-clear is not doing other things and that he is actually doing the process. The pre-clear will pick his bank clean rather than invent. He will have doubts that he is inventing. But we persevere, and we win. Intensive procedure, l'envoi. As a summary comment on these processes, it cannot be indicated too strongly that a pre-clear who is psychotic, neurotic, or who is having any psychosomatic difficulty must be run on opening procedure of 8C, R216, for many, 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 many hours. It will be discovered that on such pre-clears, the use of subjective processes, which is to say, those processes which intimately address the internal world of the pre-clear, is fruitless. The processes which produce large results and effects will not make the pre-clear well. As an example of this, many persons have been run by the best processes for 50 hours or more, only to have their cases remain stagnant. And then, these same persons being run on R216 have, day after day, with an hour or two of such running per day, commenced steady and stable gains which they have retained. When in doubt, then, on any process, run R216. And when the case claims that nothing is happening, run R216. And when the case is going very jumpily forward with many losses and few gains, run R216. And when R216 has been thoroughly run, then turn to R217. The reason why R216 is so effective is that it immediately addresses the problem of barriers. The pre-clear who is having difficulty will be found to be confounded by mechanics, which is to say, the barriers of space, energy, and mass, and that these barriers have entered into his own universe so that he himself, in his own thinking, is encountering barriers. By making the pre-clear put his attention on objects, walls, floors, ceilings, the pre-clear will eventually come into the state where he himself is stopping his sight on the barrier, rather than the barrier stopping the sight of the pre-clear, for all perception is done by stopping the perception on what is looked at. This is only one of the reasons why opening procedure 8C works. Use it. Chapter 6. Group Processing. For successful group processing, the following are near absolutes. 1. The group auditor must be able to grant beingness to the group. Stage fright and timid commands have no place in group auditing. An auditor who is afraid of a group will Q&A with the group. As soon as it gets in effect, he changes the process. He changes commands when the group changes aspect. 2. Commands must be simple, clear, concise, evenly spaced, without sudden breaks of pace or jarring interjections of loudness. 3. The processes should be objective, addressing the environment, not the thinkingness of the group. Opening procedure adapted to a group run long enough would exteriorize everyone present. 4. Every command given should be run long enough to flatten every communication lag present. 5. Every process used should be run long enough consecutively to flatten the process itself. 6. The auditor's code in full should be obeyed. If these rules are vigorously followed, good results can be attained in group processing. Here are some standard processes for groups. Each is a 1-hour session. Session 1. Spot some spots on the front wall. Spot some more spots. Spot some more spots, etc. for some time. Then, spot some spots on the floor. Spot some more spots on the floor, etc. for some time. Then, without turning around, spot some spots on the back wall. Some more spots, etc. Then spot spots on the front wall again, then the floor, then the back wall. If the ceiling is used in this, their necks get tired very quickly. Session 2. Spot some spots in your body. Pause. Spot some spots in the room. Pause. Spot some spots in your body. Pause. Spot some spots in the room. Alternate these two commands for at least 1 hour. Session 3. Examine your chair. Pause. Examine the floor. Pause. Examine your chair. Pause. Examine the floor. And alternate these for at least 1 hour. Session 4. Where's your face? Pause. Where's your face? Pause. Where's your face? Pause. Where's your face? Pause. And so on for at least 1 hour. Session 5. Start laughing. Pause. Keep on laughing. Pause. Laugh. Pause. Keep on laughing. Just these for at least an hour. Session 6. Where are you? Pause. Where are you? Pause. Where are you? Pause. For at least 1 hour. Session 7. Opening procedure by duplication. A very arduous one. Have group each one hold 2 objects, 1 in each hand. Be very sure as an auditor not to vary your commands. Call the object in your left hand Object 1. Call the object in your right hand Object 2. Look at Object 1. What is its color, temperature, weight? Look at Object 2. What is its color, temperature, weight? Look at Object 1. What is its color, temperature, weight? Look at Object 2. What is its color, temperature, weight? Use these over and over for at least an hour. Never give less than an hour of opening procedure by duplication. Never do it for only half an hour, much less 15 minutes. This is the first step of what Scientologists call Dirty 30. For convenience of the auditor, this list is given. Object 1, color, temperature, weight. Object 2, color, temperature, weight. Session 8, duplication by attention. This is very arduous. Put up 2 black pieces of material somewhat above eye level, at least 90 degrees apart for the pre-clear. Hang them up on the walls ahead of the group so all can see them. 1 on forward right wall, 1 on forward left wall is best. Describe them to the group as Object 1 and Object 2. Put your attention on Object 1. Now put your attention on Object 2. Now put your attention on Object 1. Now put your attention on Object 2. Do this without variation for at least an hour. On duplication processes, somebody in the audience usually claims this is hypnotism, for it runs out hypnotism. It induces no trances. People who think so simply don't know much about hypnotism. Session 9. This is in 4 parts. Do each part exactly 15 minutes. It is run with the group's eyes closed. Find the 2 back corners of the room. Hold on to them and don't think. The auditor repeats this quietly and reassuringly every few minutes until 15 minutes is reached. Then at 15 minutes past the hour, he says, "Now find a 3rd back corner of the room. Hold on to 3 of the back corners of the room. Sit still and don't think." He repeats, "Hold on to 3 of the back corners of the room and sit still and don't think." At the half hour, he says, "Now find all 4 back corners of the room, hold on and don't think." He repeats every few minutes, the 4 back corners of the room and don't think. When the 45-minute mark of the process has been reached, the auditor says, "Now locate the 8 corners of this room, hold on and don't think," and repeats 8 corners, don't think, every few minutes. At the hour mark, the process could be repeated. If so, do it again exactly as above. Session 10. Description Processing. Description processing should not be done on groups, some of whose members have questionable stability. Use only sessions 1 to 6 on such groups. When a group has been much run, almost any form of description processing can be used. Session 10, however, consists entirely of one command, which is not changed for at least half an hour. This is, how close does your body seem to you now? Pause. How close does your body seem to you now? Pause. How close does your body seem to you now? Etc. Summary. In processing groups, duplication of command is part of the process. Keep it simple. Grant them beingness. Keep them in contact with present time and out of their facsimile bank, and you'll get group processing clears. Make it complicated, make them figure, be shy, and the group won't come back. Never worry about boring them. The reason they're spun in is because the body and the confusion were so interesting. References. This is Scientology, the Science of Certainty. The Journal of Scientology, 16G, 1 June 1953. Forward. For nearly a quarter of a century, I have been engaged in the investigation of the fundamentals of life, the material universe, and human behavior. Such an adventure leads one down many highways, through many byroads, into many back alleys of uncertainty, through many strata of life, through many personal vicissitudes, into the teeth of vested interests, across the rim of hell, and into the very arms of heaven. Many before me have made their way across these tumultuous oceans of data, where every drop of water appears to be any other drop of water, and yet where one must find the drop. Almost everything I have studied and observed has been evaluated otherwise somewhere at some time in relation to this or that. What equipment must one have to venture upon these wastes? Where are the rules books, the maps, the signposts? All one perceives when he peers into the darkness of the unknown are the lonely bones of those who, reaching before, have found their hands empty and their lives destroyed. Such a thing is a lonely drama. One must cheer one's own triumphs and weep to himself his despair. The cold brutality of the scientific method fails far back, almost at the starting point. The airy spiralings and dread mysteries of India, where I drank deep, lead only into traps. The euphoria of religion, the ecstasies of worship and debauchery, become as meaningless as sand when one seeks in them the answer to the riddle of all existence. Many have roved upon this unmapped track. Some have survived to say a fraction of what they knew. Some have observed one thing and said quite another. Some looked knowing and said naught. One engaged upon such a quest does not even know the answer to that most important question of all. Will it be good for man to loose upon him, all in a rush as an avalanche, the knowingness of eternity? There are those who would tell you that only a fiend would set you free, and that freedom leads at best into the darkest hells. And there are those to inform you that freedom is for you and not for them. But there are also men of kind heart who know how precious is the cup and drink of wide, unbounded ways. Who is to say whether man will benefit at all from this knowledge hardly won? You are the only one who can say. Observation, application, experience, and test will tell you if the trek has been made and the answer found. For this is the science of knowing how to know. It is a science which does not include within it cold and musty data to be thrust down the throat without examination and acceptance. This is the track of knowing how to know. Travel it and see. The factors. Summation of the considerations and examinations of the human spirit and the material universe completed between 1923 and 1953 A.D. 1. Before the beginning was a cause, and the entire purpose of the cause was the creation of effect. 2. In the beginning and forever is the decision, and the decision is to be. 3. The first action of beingness is to assume a viewpoint. 4. The second action of beingness is to extend from the viewpoint points to view, which are dimension points. 5. Thus there is space created, for the definition of space is viewpoint of dimension, and the purpose of a dimension point is space and a point to view. 6. The action of a dimension point is reaching and withdrawing. 7. And from the viewpoint to the dimension points there are connection and interchange, thus new dimension points are made, thus there is communication. 8. And thus there is light. 9. And thus there is energy. 10. And thus there is life. 11. But there are other viewpoints, and these viewpoints outthrust points to view. And there comes about an interchange amongst viewpoints, but the interchange is never otherwise than in terms of exchanging dimension points. 12. The dimension point can be moved by the viewpoint, for the viewpoint, in addition to creative ability and consideration, possesses volition and potential independence of action, and the viewpoint, viewing dimension points, can change in relation to its own or other dimension points or viewpoints, and thus comes about all the fundamentals there are to motion. 13. The dimension points are each and every one, whether large or small, solid, and they are solid solely because the viewpoints say they are solid. 14. Many dimension points combine into larger gases, fluids, or solids. Thus there is matter. But the most valued point is admiration, and admiration is so strong its absence alone permits persistence. 15. The dimension point can be different from other dimension points, and thus can possess an individual quality. And many dimension points can possess a similar quality, and others can possess a similar quality unto themselves. Thus comes about the quality of classes of matter. 16. The viewpoint can combine dimension points into forms, and the forms can be simple or complex, and can be at different distances from the viewpoint, and so there can be combinations of form. And the forms are capable of motion, and the viewpoints are capable of motion, and so there can be motion of forms. 17. And the opinion of the viewpoint regulates the consideration of the forms, their stillness or their motion, and these considerations consist of assignment of beauty or ugliness to the forms, and these considerations alone are art. 18. It is the opinions of the viewpoints that some of these forms should endure. Thus there is survival. 19. And the viewpoint can never perish, but the form can perish. 20. And the many viewpoints interacting become dependent upon one another's forms, and do not choose to distinguish completely the ownership of dimension points, and so comes about a dependency upon the dimension points and upon the other viewpoints. 21. From this comes a consistency of viewpoint of the interaction of dimension points, and this, regulated, is time. 22. And there are universes. 23. The universes, then, are 3 in number: the universe created by one viewpoint, the universe created by every other viewpoint, the universe created by the mutual action of viewpoints which is agreed to be upheld, the physical universe. 24. And the viewpoints are never seen, and the viewpoints consider more and more that the dimension points are valuable. And the viewpoints try to become the anchor points, and forget that they can create more points and space and forms. Thus comes about scarcity. And the dimension points can perish, and so the viewpoints assume that they too can perish. 25. Thus comes about death. 26. The manifestations of pleasure and pain, of thought, emotion, and effort, of thinking, of sensation, of affinity, reality, communication, of behavior and being, are thus derived, and the riddles of our universe are apparently contained and answered herein. 27. There is beingness, but man believes there is only becomingness. 28. The resolution of any problem posed hereby is the establishment of viewpoints and dimension points, the betterment of condition and concourse amongst dimension points, and thereby viewpoints, and the remedy of abundance or scarcity in all things, pleasant or ugly, by the rehabilitation of the ability of the viewpoint to assume points of view and create and uncreate, neglect, start, change, and stop dimension points of any kind at the determinism of the viewpoint. Certainty in all 3 universes must be regained, for certainty, not data, is knowledge. 29. In the opinion of the viewpoint, any beingness, any thing, is better than no thing, any effect is better than no effect, any universe better than no universe, any particle better than no particle, but the particle of admiration is best of all. 30. And above these things there might be speculation only, and below these things there is the playing of the game. But these things which are written here, man can experience and know. And some may care to teach these things, and some may care to use them to assist those in distress, and some may desire to employ them to make individuals and organizations more able, and so could give to earth a culture of which earth could be proud. Humbly tendered as a gift to man by L. Ron Hubbard, April 23, 1953. This is Scientology. Scientology is the science of knowledge. It contains many parts. Its most fundamental division is Scientology itself and parascientology. Scientology. Under Scientology, we group those things of which we can be certain, and only those things of which we can be certain. Knowledge itself is certainty. Knowledge is not data. Knowingness itself is certainty. Sanity is certainty, providing only that that certainty does not fall beyond the conviction of another when he views it. To obtain a certainty, one must be able to observe. But what is the level of certainty we require? And what is the level of observation we require for a certainty or a knowledge to exist? If a man can stand before a tree and by sight, touch, or other perception know that he is confronting a tree and be able to perceive its form and be quite sure he is confronting a tree, we have the level of certainty we require. If the man will not look at the tree, or, although it is observably a tree to others, if he discovers it to be a blade of grass or a sun, then he is below the level of certainty required and would not be able to grasp Scientology. Some other person, helpfully inclined, would have to direct his perception to the tree until the man perceived without duress that it was indeed a tree he confronted. That is the only level of certainty we require in order to qualify knowledge. For knowledge is observation and is given to those who would look. Things about which there is observational difficulty, such as mirror mazes, items hidden in smoke, objects guessed at in the dark, are outside the boundaries of Scientology. 3 universes. In order to obtain knowledge and certainty, it is necessary to be able to observe, in fact, 3 universes in which there could be trees. The first of these is one's own universe. One should be able to create, for his own observation, in its total form, for total perception, a tree. The second universe would be the material universe, which is the universe of matter, energy, space, and time, which is the common meeting ground of all of us. The third universe is actually a class of universes, which could be called the Other Fellows universe, for he and all the class of Other Fellows have universes of their own. A complete clarity on all 3 universes would be well above any goal attempted, even in Scientology, and it is not necessary that one be as certain as this of 3 universes before one can be certain of Scientology. For certainty of Scientology requires only the same order of certainty one would have to know he was confronting a physical universe tree. Parascientology. Parascientology is that large bin which includes all greater or lesser uncertainties. Here are the questionable things, the things of which the common normal observer cannot be sure with a little study. Here are theories, here are groups of data, even groups commonly accepted as known. Some of the classified bodies of data which fall in parascientology are Dianetics, incidents on the whole track, the immortality of man, the existence of God, engrams containing pain and unconsciousness and yet all perception, prenatals, clears, character, and many other things which, even when closely and minutely observed, still are not certain things to those who observe them. Such things have relative truth. They have, to some, a high degree of reality. They have, to others, non-existence. They require a highly specialized system in order to observe them at all. Working with such uncertainties, one can produce broad and sweeping results. One can make the ill well again. One can right even the day which went most wrong. But those things which require highly specialized communication systems remain uncertain to many. Because Dianetics is placed in this category, does not mean it is disowned. It means simply that it is a specialized thing based on theory which, no matter how workable, requires specialized observation. It does not mean that Dianetics will cease to work, but it means that Dianetics is not easily or quickly forwarded into a complete certainty. Yet Dianetics is more of an exact science than many which have before borne that name. And Dianetics is an intimate part of Scientology, for it is through its special communication processes that the data was won which has become Scientology. Also under the heading of parascientology, one would place such things as past lives, mysterious influences, astrology, mysticism, religion, psychology, psychiatry, nuclear physics, and any other science based on theory. A doctor, for instance, may seem entirely certain of the cause of some disease, yet it depends upon the doctor's certainty for the layman to accept that cause of the disease. Here we have a specialized communications system. We may have an arduously trained observer, a highly mechanistic observation resting upon a theory which is not, even at this late date, entirely accepted even in the best circles. That penicillin cures certain things is a certainty to the doctor, even when penicillin suddenly and inexplicably fails to cure something. Any inexplicable failure introduces an uncertainty, which thereafter removes the subject from the realm of an easily obtained certainty. Hypnotism, no matter how certain the hypnotist may be that he is effective on some people, is a wild variable and even in expert practice is a definite uncertainty. The use of drugs or shock produce such variable results that they class far down a gradient scale, which would begin with a fair degree of certainty and which would end with almost no certainty of any kind. Certainty and sanity. We have here, then, a parallel between certainty and sanity. The less certain the individual on any subject, the less sane he could be said to be upon that subject. The less certain he is of what he views in the material universe, what he views in his own or the other fellow's universe, the less sane he could be said to be. The road to sanity is demonstrably the road to increasing certainty. Starting at any level, it is only necessary to obtain a fair degree of certainty on the messed universe to improve considerably one's beingness. Above that, one obtains some certainty of his own universe and some certainty of the other fellow's universe. Certainty, then, is clarity of observation. Of course, above this, vitally so, is certainty in creation. Here is the artist, here is the master, here is the very Great Spirit. As one advances, he discovers that what he first perceived as a certainty can be considerably improved. Thus, we have certainty as a gradient scale. It is not an absolute, but it is defined as the certainty that one perceives, or the certainty that one creates what one perceives, or the certainty that there is perception. Sanity and perception, certainty and perception, knowledge and observation are then all of a kind, and amongst them we have sanity. What will Scientology do? It has already been observed by many who are not that doubtful thing, the qualified observer, that people who have traveled a road toward certainty improve in the many ways people consider it desirable to improve. The road into uncertainty is the road toward psychosomatic illness, doubts, anxieties, fears, worries, and vanishing awareness. As awareness is decreased, so does certainty decrease. And the end of this road is a nothingness, quite opposite from the nothingness which can create. It is a nothingness which is a total effect. Simplicity, it would be suspected, would be the keynote of any process, any communication system which would deliver into a person's hands the command of his own beingness. The simplicity consists of the observation of 3 universes. The first step is the observation of one's own universe and what has taken place in that universe in the past. The second step would be observation of the material universe and direct consultation with it to discover its forms, depths, emptinesses, and solidities. The third step would be the observation of other people's universes, or their observation of the messed universe, for there are a multitude of viewpoints of these 3 universes. Where observation of one of these 3 is suppressed, hidden, denied, the individual is unable to mount beyond a certain point into certainty. The Triangle of Certainty of Awareness. See Audiobook Directory. Here we have a triangle not unlike the affinity reality communication triangle of Dianetics. These three universes are interactive to the degree that one raises all three by raising one, but one can raise two only so far before it is restrained by the uncertainty on the third. Thus, any point on this triangle is capable of suppressing the other 2 points, and any point of this triangle is capable of raising the other 2 points. This drawing could be called the scale of awareness. It is also the scale of action and the cycle of action. The numbers represent entirely arbitrary levels which yet can be found to mean levels of predictable attitudes. It would be found on the tone scale that humanity at this time hovers, in terms of awareness, at the level of 2.0, slightly above or slightly below. Here is scarcely any awareness at all compared to the awareness which is available. It is very puzzling to people at higher levels of awareness why people behave toward them as they do. Such higher-level people have not realized that they are not seen, much less understood. People at low levels of awareness do not observe, but substitute for observation preconceptions, evaluation, suppositions, and even physical pain by which to attain their certainties. In the field of Zen Buddhism, there is a practice of administering a sudden blow by which is obtained a feeling of certainty. Here is a relatively false certainty, the certainty of impact, although all certainty actually is derived below the level of 10.0 from prior impact for its conviction. After a brutal accident or operation under anesthetic, it can be observed that individuals will sometimes react with an enormous conviction which yet does not seem to be based upon any fact. A certainty has been carried home to them in terms of a physical impact. This then is not a self-determined certainty, and the self-determined certainty carries one into high echelons. The mistaken use of shock by the ancient Greek upon the insane, the use of whips in old Bedlam, all sought to deliver sufficient certainty to the insane to cause them to be less insane. Certainty delivered by blow and punishment is a non-self-determined certainty. It is productive of stimulus-response behavior. At a given stimulus, a dog who has been beaten, for instance, will react invariably providing he has been sufficiently beaten. But if he has been beaten too much, the stimulus will result only in confused bewilderment. Thus, certainty delivered by blows, by applied force, eventually brings about a certainty as absolute as one could desire, total unawareness. Unconsciousness itself is a certainty which is sought by many individuals who have failed repeatedly to reach any high level of awareness certainty. These people then desire an unawareness certainty, so it seems that the thirst for certainty can lead one into oblivion if one seeks it as an effect. Uncertainty. Maybe. An uncertainty is the product of two certainties. One of these is a conviction, whether arrived at by observation, causative, or by a blow, effected. The other is a negative certainty. One can be sure that something is, and one can be sure that something is not. He can be sure there is something, no matter what it is, present, and that there is nothing present. These two certainties, commingling, create a condition of uncertainty known as maybe. A maybe continues to be held in suspense in an individual's mind simply because he cannot decide whether it is nothing or something. He grasps and holds the certainties each time he has been given evidence or has made the decision that it is a somethingness, and each time he has come to suppose that it is a nothingness. Where these two certainties of something and nothing are concerned with and can vitally influence one's continuance in a state of beingness, or where one merely supposes they can influence such a state of beingness, a condition of anxiety arises. Thus, anxiety, indecision, uncertainty, a state of maybe, can exist only in the presence of poor observation or the inability to observe. Such a state can be remedied simply by eradicating from the past of the individual, first, the conviction that the matter is important. Next, the conviction that it is totally unimportant. Next, all the times when he was certain of the somethingness, and then all the times he was certain of the nothingness. One merely causes the individual to observe in terms of the three universes. Analytical and reactive minds. We face, then, two general types of mind. One is an analytical thing, which depends for its conclusions upon perception, or even creation of things to perceive, and bases its judgment on observation in terms of three universes. This we call the analytical mind. We could also call it the spirit. We could also call it the awareness of awareness unit. We could call it the conscious individual himself in the best of his beingness. We could call it the mathematical term, thetan. Whatever its name, we would have precisely the same thing, a viewpoint capable of creation and observation of things created, which concludes and directs action in terms of the existing state of three universes as they are observed directly. The other type of mind resembles nothing if not an electronic brain. It receives its data in terms of conviction delivered by force. It is directed by and reacts to hidden influences rather than observed influences, and is to a large extent the reverse image and has reverse intentions to the analytical mind. This we call the reactive mind. It is an actual entity, and it operates in terms of experience and theory. It sets up thinking machinery around uncertainties, and the course of its thinking is downward. It seeks to direct and dictate out of pain and the effort to avoid pain. The primary difference between these two minds is that one, the analytical mind, is without finite duration, and the other, the reactive mind, is susceptible to death. These two minds are a certainty, since they can be observed by anyone, even in himself. He knows he is aware of things around him, and he knows that he has definite desires which are perfectly reasonable. And he knows, if he is a Homo sapiens or animal, that internal commands and compulsions, even those which tell him to eat and tell his heart to beat, are not directly within his control. All thinking can then be divided for our purposes into thinking based upon direct observation and conclusions from observation, and thinking which has to know before it can be or observe. Analytical thought can be called analytical thought because it directly observes and analyzes what it observes in terms of observations which are immediately present. The reactive mind concludes and acts entirely on experience, and with only a fragmentary regard to things present which could be observed. The reactive mind begins and continues with uncertainties, and where the course of the analytical mind is progressively upward, the course of the reactive mind is progressively downward. The reactive mind comes into being as a servant of the analytical mind and is set up by the analytical mind to work upon and store data about the basic uncertainty that there might be something and there might be nothing. The reactive mind then continues in growth, and from the servant, if the analytical mind does not observe it, tends to become the master. Survival. The goals of the two minds are not separate goals. The reactive mind is a makeshift effort on the part of the viewpoint to perceive things which it believes to be unperceivable except by comparison of uncertainties. Both minds are seeking to persist and endure through time, which is to say, survive. The analytical mind can, unless it becomes too uncertain and by that uncertainty has set up too many reactive mechanisms, persist indefinitely. The reactive mind pursues the cycle of lifespan. The analytical mind seeks by creation to cause an effect. The reactive mind seeks by duplication, borrowing, and experience to cause an effect. Both minds, then, are seeking to cause an effect, and this is their entire motivation for action. Each of the three universes seeks to persist indefinitely. Each is continuously caused, and each is continually receiving an effect. Each has its own adjudication of what it should receive as an effect and what it should cause. Time itself consists of a continuous interaction of the universes. Each may have its own space. Each has its own particular energy. The urge of any of these three universes towards survival is subdivisible for each of the three universes into 8 dynamics. There are then 4 groups of 8 dynamics each: the 8 dynamics of one's own universe, the 8 dynamics of the physical universe, the 8 dynamics of the other's universe, as well as the 8 dynamics of the triangle itself. These dynamics could be subdivided as follows. The first dynamic would be that one most intimate to the universe, which could be said to be the dynamic urging the survival of self. The second dynamic would be that one of the persistence of admiration in many forms in one's own and the other's universe. This admiration could take the form of sex, eating, or purely the sensation of creation, such as sex and children. In the physical universe, it would be that light emanation similar to sunlight. The third dynamic could be said to be that dynamic embracing persistence of groups of objects or entities. The fourth dynamic would concern itself with an entire species. The fifth dynamic would concern itself with other living species and would embrace all other living species. The sixth dynamic would embrace, in terms of survival, the space, energy, matter, and forms of the universe as themselves. The seventh dynamic would be the urge to survive of the spirits or spiritual aspects of each universe. The eighth dynamic would be the overall creativeness or destructiveness as a continuing impulse. Each impulse is concerned wholly with systems of communication. Communication requires a viewpoint and a destination in its most elementary form. And as this grows more complex, and as it grows more important, communication grows more rigid and fixed as to its codes and lines. The reason for communication is to effect effects and observe effects. Triangle of affinity, reality, and communication. Each of the three universes has its own triangle of affinity, reality, and communication. These three things are interdependent one upon another, and one cannot exist independent of the other two. Affinity is the characteristic of the energy as to its vibration, condensation, rarefaction, and, in the physical universe, its degree of cohesion or dispersion. Reality depends upon coincidence or non-coincidence of flow, and is marked mainly by the direction of flow. It is essentially agreement. Communication is the volume of flow or lack of flow. Of these three, communication is by far the most important. Affinity and reality exist to further communication. Tone scale. Under affinity, we have, for instance, all the varied emotions which go from apathy at 0.1 through grief, fear, anger, antagonism, boredom, enthusiasm, exhilaration, and serenity, in that order. It is affinity and this rising scale of the characteristics of emotion which give us the tone scale. The tone scale can be a certainty to anyone who has seen other beings react emotionally, who has himself felt emotion, and who has seen the varied moods of the physical universe itself. The periodic chart of chemistry is itself a sort of tone scale. There is a downward spiral on the tone scale and an upward spiral. These spirals are marked by decreasing or increasing awareness. To go upscale, one must increase his power to observe with certainty. To go downscale, one must decrease his power to observe. There are two certainties here. One is a complete certainty of total awareness, which would be at 40.0 on the tone scale. And the other is a certainty of total unawareness, which would be 0.0 on the tone scale, or nearly so. Neither end, however, is itself an absolute for the analytical mind, and the analytical mind can go below 0.0 of the reactive mind. However, these two classes of certainty are very wide in their satisfaction of the qualifications of a certainty. Because the two extremes of the scale are both zeros in terms of space, it is possible to confuse one for the other, and so make it appear that total awareness would be total unawareness. Experience and observation can disabuse one of this idea. The scale is not circular. The characteristics and potentiality of the top of the scale, or near the top of the scale, are unbounded creation, outflow, certainty, going awayness, explosion, holding apart, spreading apart, letting go, reaching, goals of a causative nature, widening space, freedom from time, separateness, differentiation, givingness of sensation, vaporizingness, glowingness, lightness, whiteness, desolidifyingness, total awareness, total understanding, total ARC. The bottom of the scale and the vicinity around it includes death, inflow, certainty, coming backness, implosion, letting come together, pulling together, holding together, withdrawing, effect goals, ambition to be an effect rather than a cause, contracting space, no time or infinite time in a moment, connectingness, identification, identity, receivingness of sensation, condensation, blackness, solidification, no awareness, no understanding, no ARC. These various characteristics or intentions are observable for any dynamic and any universe. Between these two extremes is the mean of action where complete freedom to do any of these things, of the top or bottom of the scale, is exercised. Therefore, somewhere between 3.5 on the tone scale and 36.5, there is action. The above conditions of top and bottom of the scale, of course, reach away from the extreme and toward each other. As awareness becomes more fixed, intentions become less flexible in action. Communication systems become more rigid, more complex, and less susceptible of alteration. One alters these communication systems, however, by raising or lowering certainty on the three universes. Viewpoint. The principal difference between the analytical mind, in a state of awareness itself, and the reactive mind is that the analytical mind, highly aware, knows that it is not the thing, but is the viewpoint of things. Of this it can be very certain as it increases in awareness. The reactive mind conceives itself to be the thing. The analytical mind is in a state of becoming without reaching the point of being. The reactive mind conceives itself to be in a state of being and so resists becoming. Perception is accomplished by the analytical mind in a high state of awareness by its own outflow and inflow, or by its receipt of inflows which it can outflow. The reactive mind perceives by inflow only and makes complete recordings of the inflow. The analytical mind is capable of developing its own energy. It is the energy of the analytical mind which empowers the reactive mind. But the reactive mind can be empowered as well by the energy of other minds and by the life energy contained in any living thing. Thus, the reactive mind can become the servant of all things. It can believe it is anything. It can believe it is owned or has the identity of anyone, regardless of whom it was created to serve. The analytical mind serves itself in a continuing knowledge of serving itself. But it serves as well and knows it serves the other two universes. The analytical mind extends from it points or observes points extended from it and thus conceives space. Space is only the viewpoint of dimension. The dimension depends upon those points which give it boundary. Within these dimensions, called space, the analytical mind can create energy and form, and thus, by change of form, beget time. Energy, two-terminal universe. Whether created by or within any one of the three universes, flow of energy is accomplished by setting up a terminal and flowing toward it, from a viewpoint, a stream of energy, or by setting up two terminals and causing a flow between them. Each universe could be said to be a two-terminal universe, but flows can be set up on a basis of more than two terminals. The basic unit of any universe in terms of energy is 2. This, however, does not restrict nor qualify the number of viewpoints which any universe can have. A physical universe, however, is observably a two-terminal universe and a two-point universe. And it is also observable that the other two universes set up almost invariably two terminals or more and utilize two viewpoints each. Very low on the scale, in terms of awareness, the analytical mind conceives itself to be the reactive mind, and so does not act or perform to put out dimension points so as to get space, and does not generate for its own accountability energy. It does, however, always generate energy, whether it admits it is doing so or not. Attention. The concern of two viewpoints is attention. Each viewpoint is apt to be curious about or desire the attention of another viewpoint. Admiration. The most valuable part of an attention interchange is admiration. Admiration is a special particle. It is a universal solvent. It is the very substance of a communication line. And it is that thing which is considered desirable in the game of the three universes. Admiration goes into the interplay of the universes in the form of made-up objects or even in the form of bodies. These made-up objects could be called creative pictures. These, as they become more complex in form, take on the aspect of a life of their own and become animated beings. Two viewpoints, setting up terminals to be viewed by the other viewpoint, demand attention one from the other and will invent all manner of reasons to command the continuing attention of the other viewpoint. One of the primary methods of operation is to make one's object or action of object so strange that the other viewpoint cannot look away. Another is to make the object or action of object so artistic or colorful or interesting that the other viewpoint cannot look away. Another method is the command by force for attention. Another method is to inhibit the attention so as to invite it solely to one's objects. One can plot this as a cycle of demand for attention, with curiosity below 40.0, desire below that, enforcement down to as low as 1.5 on the scale, and inhibition at 1.1 on down. The lowest methods of this scale are quite observable among men, and the primary operation, very low on the scale, is inhibition of attention elsewhere. By cutting the communication lines of another viewpoint, an effect is created on the other viewpoint by which that viewpoint fixes with whatever emotion, since any attention is better than no attention, upon the products or objects of that one who cut the communication line. There are many methods of cutting communication lines. A common one could be summarized as, "It's too horrible over that way for you to look." Viewpoints are thus given the understanding that they are surrounded by horrible things which they have never perceived, and which indeed have never existed, but which are said to be there so that they will be forced to give attention. Hidden influences are the commonest methods of enforcing attention. Of course, any analytical mind is itself a hidden influence, since it cannot as itself be perceived. Only its energy and objects can be perceived. Thus comes about the worship of the hidden influence, the fear of the hidden influence, the neurosis about hidden influences. Eating and sex. The goal of seeking attention is to receive the particle admiration. One creates effects simply in order to create effects. But he is given the bonus of admiration when he creates sufficient effect, or, what is most important, when he demands, commands, and is able to effect admiration by duress. It might be said that there was no eating until one was so furious about not being admired that one slew as a punishment. The tiger walking through the woods with his beautiful stripes, it could be humorously offered, would never have eaten a thing and would not be eating today if some monkey had not chattered insults at him instead of admiring him. The tiger compelled the admiration of the monkey by pinning him down and eating him up. It can be observed that the eating of living flesh or live cells delivers a kind of admiration to the taste. And it can be observed that under torture, duress of all kinds, the tortured one will suddenly, if degradedly, admire his torturer. Energy pictures which we call mock-ups are created things which themselves contain admiration. It could be said that these are prior to bodies. The acquisition of admiration by pain, by eating, or by devouring something that belongs to somebody else was later succeeded by a better communication system which would prevent eating on such a rigorous scale. This thing was sex, which is an interchange of condensed admiration particles which forwards new bodies into being. So far as the body of Homo sapiens is concerned, its desire not to be eaten has been answered, evidently, by sex. And sex performs the function of continued survival of form. Thus, so long as one has the symbol of sex to offer, one feels relatively secure, and when he does not have that symbol to offer, one feels insecure. But of this evolution of admiration and of evolution itself, we have no high degree of certainty as we first begin to observe, and it is offered here as an explanation of why it is a thing we do not particularly need, and a thing of which we will or will not gain a future certainty as we go up the scale of awareness. Many things are non-existent low on the scale. Many things are uncertain on the scale at low levels, which become high-level certainties up on the scale. But this certainty only depends on the positiveness of observation, or the positiveness of observation which says the thing does not exist. Processing, gradient scale to certainty. It is not the purpose of Scientology to present an uncertainty and then demand that it be accepted. For here is the gradient scale of a process by which one can become more certain. If there be immortality, or even the lack of necessity on the part of the analytical mind to be a specific object, then one will find it out in due course as he is processed. If they do not exist, again, one will find it out. This would be a matter of progressive observation. Where a thing exists in the form of an uncertainty, it has a tendency to plague the reactive mind. For the reactive mind itself deals only with uncertainties, and its convictions are based entirely on blows and pain. Applause. cause and effect. A very basic uncertainty comes about on the subject of applause. High on the scale, one performs for an effect and knows that it is an effect, whether or not there is any attention or admiration, which is to say, applause. A little lower on the scale, one desires a nod or the actual substance of admiration. If it does not come, he is not concerned. But even lower on the scale, the individual actively invites and requests applause. Lower than that, he becomes angry in the absence of applause. Lower than that, he exhibits fear, grief, and apathy in the lack of applause. Apathy is the realization that there will never be any applause for any effect. That which is not admired tends to persist, for the reactive mind does not destroy. One can become fixed upon producing a certain effect simply by insisting that it be admired. The longer it is not admired, the longer one is likely to persist in demanding that it be admired, which is to say exhibiting it, until at length it breaks down scale to a lower level and he realizes it will not be admired, at which time he becomes the effect of it. Here one has become the effect of one's own cause. Here is the psychosomatic illness, which began as a pretended infirmity in order to create an effect. Perhaps it was once applauded, but not sufficiently. And after a while was not applauded at all, and one was forced to applaud it himself and believe it himself. And so it came into existence and was for him a certainty. This, too, is the course of responsibility which degenerates into irresponsibility. At the top of the scale, one knows that he is causing the effect. Lower on the scale, he says he is not causing the effect. Even though he is causing the effect, only he knows he causes it. Even lower on the scale, he does not take the middle step. He causes an effect and instantly believes that something else caused the effect rather than himself, and that he is the effect of the effect. One can see cause and effect working in terms of viewpoints. If one has not been applauded for many things, one will begin to take the position of the audience. One does the trick, creates the thing, and then goes out front, sits down over the whole theater, and applauds it. For one can be a knowing viewpoint from many places. This is often the case with a writer who is seldom confronted by his readers. Indeed, most editors are so low-toned that they cut off all the admiring letters of a writer and leave him to wonder. As other things influence the writer, he goes downscale to a point where he believes the things he writes are not admired, and so he has to go out and sit in the audience. This is the first step to becoming the effect of his own cause. After a while, he thinks he is the audience. When he does this, he is no longer the writer. Thus with the painter, thus with anyone. Evaluation and perception. The little child is quite bent on causing effects and getting things admired. He is continually being evaluated in terms of what is to be admired. Evaluation is the reactive mind's conception of viewpoint. The reactive mind does not perceive, it evaluates. To the analytical mind, it may sometimes appear that the reactive mind has a viewpoint. The reactive mind does not have a viewpoint. It has an evaluation of viewpoint. Thus, the viewpoint of the analytical mind is an actual point from which one perceives. Perception is done by sight, sound, smell, tactile, etc. The reactive mind's viewpoint is an opinion based on another opinion and upon a very small amount of observation. And that observation would be formed out of uncertainties. Thus the confusion of the word viewpoint itself. It can be a point from which one can be aware, which is its analytical definition, and it can be somebody's ideas on a certain subject, which is the reactive definition. Because the analytical mind and reactive mind in men can become confused one with the other, one is most prone to assume the actual perception point of that person who has most evaluated for him. Father and mother, for instance, have evaluated about art, habits, goodness, behavior, badness, how one should dress, what manners are, to such a degree that the child has no choice, it seems to him, but to assume their points to look from. And so we will find the child observing things as his father or mother would observe them, and even wearing his father's glasses or his mother's glasses as he grows older. He has confused evaluation with actual perception. Where he has been told that he is bad-looking, ugly, ridiculous, unmannerly, crude, and so forth by somebody else continually, his reactive mind, which like a prostitute cares nothing for its master and serves anyone, eventually causes him to lose his viewpoint of himself, and he sees himself not by observation but by evaluation as something undesirable. Of course, he would rather be something than nothing. He has indeed a horror of being nothing. So it is better to be something ugly about which he is guessing than to be nothing at all. And so he persists and continues as he is. Furthermore, because he has been talked to so much about talking, about looking, about perceiving in general, he has gotten the idea that his communication system is unalterable. His whole business of living, actually, is a communication system with the motivation of causing effects. Thus, the lower he is on the tone scale, the more he persists without change, except downward. Reaching and withdrawing. The characteristic actions of the energy produced by the analytical mind are summarized above in terms of the top and bottom of the scale. However, the most important of these seem to be reaching and withdrawing. In the MEST universe, we have start, stop, and change as the characteristics of motion. The analytical mind, however, with its dimension points, is more concerned with reaching and withdrawing. This is the way it perceives. It can control by creating or using energy, such as that in the physical universe, and it uses this energy to start, stop, and change other energy. But in itself, its handling of dimension points direction consists of reaching and withdrawing. Compulsive reaching, compulsive withdrawing, bring about many odd and interesting manifestations. The sensation of pain is actually a sensation of loss. It is a loss of beingness, a loss of position and awareness. Therefore, when one loses anything, he has a tendency to perceive less, for there is less to perceive. Something has withdrawn from him without his consent. This would be the definition of loss. This brings about, eventually, a condition of darkness. This could also be called an ARC break. If he has lost something, the guilty party is probably in the other two universes. It is either the physical universe or another's universe which has caused the loss. Thus, he has less communication since he is unwilling to communicate, which is to say, put out things in the direction of something which is going to take them and carry them away without his further consent. This brings about a reduction of the desire to be aware, which is the reduction of affinity, reduction of agreement, reality, and the reduction of communication in general. In a moment of severe disappointment in one's fellow man, the universe around him actually grows dark. Simply as an experiment, one can say to himself that he has the only viewpoint there is, that all other viewpoints are simply mocked up by him. He will get an almost immediate diminution of lightness around him. This is the same mechanism as the mechanism of loss. The result of too much loss is darkness. Another mechanism of the darkness and unawareness settling over a person is brought about by the loss of a viewpoint which has greatly evaluated for one. One has had a mother or a father who over-evaluated about everything, and then this parent, or guardian or ally in life, such as a teacher, died or inexplicably disappeared. One was depending for actual looking, seeing, hearing upon the continued existence of this individual. Suddenly that individual goes and all becomes dark. After that, one is not able to perceive one's own universe. For one was most of the time actually perceiving the lost person's universe, and now that universe is no longer there, which gives one the idea that he has no universe to perceive. This even dims his perception of the physical universe, of course, because of the interdependence of the triangle of the three universes. When one has had an insufficient amount of admiration from sexual partners, the physical body, which depends mainly upon sex for its sensation and continuance to almost as great a degree as upon eating, will actually begin to change viewpoint to the other sex. Thus we find some older men becoming as women, some older women becoming as men. Thus we get the failure of the androgen and estrogen balances and the resultant decay of the body. Here, in the matter of sex, one finds reaching and withdrawing rising to considerable magnitude. The reactive mind, operating the body, conceives itself to be withdrawing and does not know from what it is withdrawing, for it perceives itself to be under the compulsion of reaching and does not know for what it is reaching. In terms of processing, it is withdrawing from or reaching toward sexual partners. When it withdraws a great deal, or when it has been withdrawn from a great deal, the reactive mind conceives the body to be covered with blackness. This resolves in terms of sex and eating. It should be fully understood, however, that this is the resolution of the problem of the body, and this resolution is employed only when the analytical mind cannot be brought itself into an immediate height of awareness using SOP8. When one addresses the body itself, and only the body, one addresses the subject of sex and the subject of eating in terms of reaching and withdrawing. Matched terminaling and double terminaling. The particular processes used on this are called matched terminaling or double terminaling. This is done in the following fashion. Even when the individual cannot create forms of his own, he can at least create two ideas in front of him. He can put a form with an idea or an idea itself facing another idea out in front of him, both of them exactly alike, withdrawing from sex, reaching toward sex. He will very often find other terminals he did not create suddenly appearing. When he has run withdrawing, those things he puts up will be black, and the object from which it is withdrawing will be white. He should get the idea that the whitish object is reaching and the blackish object is withdrawing. He should then run this identical terminal as though it is being put up by somebody else, not himself, again with withdrawing for blackness, reaching for grayness. And then he should run it as though somebody is putting it up for somebody else, other than himself. These three causations, brackets, of putting up this identical idea facing itself are himself, another for him, and others for others. This is called matched terminaling. Double terminaling simply puts up two pairs of matched terminals. The pairs may each be of two different things, but each pair contains one thing the same as the other pair. In other words, husband and wife is one pair, and husband and wife is the other pair. These, parallel, give one the two-terminal effect necessary for a discharge. One will find that these terminals discharge one against the other. However, this is a physical body technique, and it is limited in use. If one becomes very ill in doing it, he should turn to what is called, later on, an unlimited technique. Or he should do the next to last list in the book Self-Analysis in Scientology and do it over and over. Or he should simply go straight through Short 8. It has many remedies. This matched terminaling for oneself, others for oneself, and others for others on the subject of reaching and withdrawing on sex can, of course, be considerably expanded as a technique. It can have in it compulsion to reach, compulsion to withdraw, compulsion to reach while somebody else is withdrawing, compulsion not to reach. And it can be addressed in terms of all those complexes and things which Sigmund Freud observed empirically while investigating in his practice. L. Ron Hubbard studied Freudian psychoanalysis under the tutelage of Commander Thompson, M.C., USN, who was one of Freud's star pupils. Commander Thompson studied under Freud himself in Vienna to introduce to the United States Navy the theory and practice of psychoanalysis and was sent to Vienna for that purpose. Sigmund Freud observed, even as you may have observed, that a person's concern and trouble with his body commonly began at the age of puberty, and that a curve of his ups and downs did sudden changes at those points where he was defeated sexually, where his sexual impotence ceased, and where it increased. Dr. Freud unfortunately developed no fast or deeply workable techniques to resolve problems posed by these observations, mainly because the selection of sex as the prime motivator was not the selection of the basic mechanics of beingness. However, the brilliance of Freud's theories and his extrapolations from a limited amount of data, and his courage in standing before a whole world and declaring that an unpopular subject was the root of all evil, has no parallel in history. The complexes he mentioned, each and every one, are discoverable in the mind by direct observation or electropsychometry, and are resolvable in the body by the technique of matched terminals in brackets, which is the proper name for the above. Where the level of the case is step 4 or step 5 or below in SOP8, it is necessary to free the analytical mind of the grip of the body. The analytical mind cannot withdraw. The body is most swiftly reduced to compliance by running the second dynamic. This is very far from the end of all of processing, but it is the fastest method I have developed for remedying occlusion or accomplishing exteriorization in low-step cases. In sex and eating, the body desires to be in effect most strongly. And in these things one does find the strongest desire on the part of the body in terms of immediate accessibility. The analytical mind, on the other hand, can create its own sensation, but it has become dependent upon the body. Even so, it is that part of the beingness which desires to give sensation rather than receive it. Thus, one has the conflict of desire to give sensation crossed with the desire to receive sensation on the part of the reactive mind. The body's desire to receive sensation is so strong that an extremely powerful and persistent uncertainty, maybe, develops, and the primary conflict of the analytical mind and the body's reactive mind comes about. I cannot help but give forth my own admiration to a man who, working without prior art, without electropsychometry, without nuclear physics, without any broad observation of primitive tribes or ethnology in general, separated from his conclusion by every convention of his age, yet hit upon and set forth with the weight of logic alone the center of disturbance in the human body. He did not live to see his theory completely validated. He was deserted by his students, who began to write fantastic theories, completely unworkable and far from the point, which yet were better accepted. In discouragement at the end of his career, he wrote a paper called Psychoanalysis, Terminable and Interminable. Freud, with no method of direct observation, spoke of prenatals, birth trauma, and, verbally if not in writing, of past existences and of the continuing immortality of the individual. No praise can be great enough to give such a man, and the credit I give him for my own inspiration and work is entirely without reservation or bounds. My only regret is that I do not know where he is today to show him his 1894 libido theory completely vindicated, and a Freudian psychoanalysis delivered beyond his expectations in 5 hours of auditing. Processing the analytical mind. The analytical mind can be processed directly, and it improves simply by changing its mind about things. But so long as it believes itself to be closely dependent upon the reactive mind and the body, it cannot change its opinions. These opinions, however, are not simple shifts of mind. They are changes of experience. The analytical mind must discover that it can perceive accurately in 3 universes, that it does not need to be dependent upon the body, and that it can handle any reactive mind. This is done by increasing its powers of perception, increasing the number of viewpoints it can assume, and increasing its ability to locate spaces, actions, and objects in time and space, and by increasing its ability above that to create space, energy, and objects. This is done by drills and by the procedures of the first 3 steps of SOP 8. It should not for one moment be thought that one is trying to perform, by the gradient scale of increasing certainties in Scientology, all the tricks and exhibitions of which the ancients speak. We are not even vaguely interested in moving physical universe objects, throwing lightning about, or in creating solids which can be seen by others. We are only interested in the rehabilitation of the analytical mind to a point where it can handle any reactive mind, whatever its proximity to that reactive mind. We are not interested, in other words, in the objective reality, from another viewpoint, of the capabilities of the analytical mind in performing various types of tricks. Whether it can do these things or not do these things falls into the realm of parascientology, for it is completely beyond the ability to be certain, where the analytical mind is not processed well up and where the observer is very low on the tone scale. We are not trying to achieve the certainty of mysticism, necromancy, or, to be blunt, the Indian rope trick. We are trying to make sane, well beings. The analytical mind, when it is in close proximity to the body, is unwittingly continually restimulating a reactive mind, which some say evolved through very difficult and savage stages. Just as Freud said, the suppression in the mind is the suppression of things so bestial, so savage, that the pre-clear undergoing professional processing is extremely shocked. Almost anything and almost any impulse, including a thirst for pain and a desire to create any kind of effect, no matter how bad, will manifest itself while processing the reactive mind. Cannibalism, purely for sensation, so as to get the last remnants of admiration of the tortured and dying being, becomes a subjective certainty to the pre-clear who undergoes processing and has to have his reactive mind addressed before he can be himself, which is, of course, his analytical mind. The more suppression this reactive mind gets, the more it restimulates its beastliness. The analytical mind is basically good. It has suffered from this proximity to the reactive mind. It is no wonder that Plato wrote as he did in an essay about the conduct and behavior of man. It is no wonder that states are completely convinced that man is a beast and must be held in check at pistol point. The wonder is that in a civilized world, so few crimes are committed. Our desire is to reach the basic goodness of the individual and bring him into a level of activity where he does not have to do terrible and gruesome things in order to produce an effect. There are various levels as one goes upscale, where these manifestations seem to be the all and everything of existence. One becomes completely downhearted at the thought that one goes upscale simply to get to a point where he can kill and maim and hurt with impunity. One's feelings of honor, ethics, all his finer beingness is revolted at the idea that this is, in actuality, life. He should say, instead, that this is life in a stupid conflict of uncertainties. The goal is not to get above such things and ignore them. The goal is to achieve the basic decency which is inherent in all of us. Processing techniques. Although I have given you here matched terminal brackets on the subject of reach and withdraw, with particular attention to sex, you must understand that this is a professional auditor's technique. The first 3 steps of SOP 8, when they can be done by alert, interested people. From step 4 down, a professional auditor is not simply desirable, he is completely necessary. This technique which I have given you here turns on when one runs its compulsive aspects, particularly when one runs must reach and can't reach, the emotion which we see in sanitariums which is called insanity. And although the turn-on is brief and temporary and would wear away in about 3 days, an inexperienced auditor could become quite frightened. Simply by carrying on with the technique, or by getting back to unlimited techniques, or by taking self-analysis with its next-to-last list, these things could be remedied. But these techniques walk on the rim of hell where they are addressed to cases below the level of 4. If the test subject or the pre-clear cannot make space, which is to say step 3 of SOP 8, let a professional auditor have him. The professional auditor, by using matched terminal brackets of reach and withdraw with attention to sex, will be able to exteriorize this analytical mind and turn on its perceptions. This is skilled work, however, and is a little too shockingly intimate to the seamier side of life for tender hands and tender minds. Even the operation of wasting, which is contained in Expanded Gita, is capable of turning on a vast amount of illness and somatic on the part of the pre-clear. Expanded Gita is a limited technique, which is to say it can be audited perhaps only for 10 minutes and at the most for 50 or 60 hours, without finding the pre-clear on the downgrade. One has to turn to an unlimited technique, such as contained in Short 8, if the pre-clear becomes too ill trying to waste things. Just because an unlimited technique is labeled unlimited is no reason why it is a faint technique. These unlimited techniques are extremely powerful. They're very simple, but again, when one of them becomes too strong for the pre-clear, it is necessary to turn to something simpler and easier. Simply getting the idea in 2 places, the idea, so to speak, facing the idea, there is nothing, will turn on a sick sensation in many pre-clears. This fear of being nothing is very great. He will be anything rather than nothing. A safe technique is that technique which always, I repeat always, deals in things of which the pre-clear is certain. When one deals with uncertainties, one is dealing with circuits. One can use double terminaling, which is to say 2 pairs of matched terminals, of the pre-clear being certain of things. One never runs things or puts the pre-clear up against things of which one is uncertain, or of which the pre-clear is uncertain, if one wishes the pre-clear to come on up the tone scale. As an example of this, on any object, thing, or idea, on any psychosomatic ill or any numb portion of the body, one has only to run, "There is something there. There is nothing there." Have it saying, "There is something here. There is nothing here." One can do a complete bracket on this, having the numb or painful or injured area saying, "There is something here. There is nothing here." Having it then say, "There is something there. There is nothing there." Having the pre-clear say about the area, "There is something there. There is nothing there." And then the pre-clear about himself, "There is something here. There is nothing here." This makes a complete bracket. This turns on and off interesting somatics. A professional auditor could get the somatic or numb area to get the feeling it is reaching while the preclear is withdrawing, the preclear reaching while it is withdrawing, and bring about a change in any somatic. As one is dealing with communication systems, one must realize that communication depends upon certainty of dispatch and receipt, and certainty of what it is that is being dispatched and received. Thus, one does not deal in uncertainties. There is something, there is nothing, are of course observable certainties, because one is top scale, the other is bottom scale. One does not say what the something is, and of course nothingness needs no qualifications. In the case of the person who has been and is trying to become again, one should run out by concepts the former successes, the triumphs of that person, and the times when he was absolutely certain he had failed. One does this with double terminals or matched terminal brackets. This is a professional technique. The road to certainty. It was mentioned to me by Meredith Starr, one of the great mystics from Cyprus, that Jung had once had a great experience and had sought ever since to recover it. He gave this as another man's opinion of Jung. This gives you some clue as to what happens to someone who has a great triumph. He ever afterwards is not seeking to duplicate the triumph, he is seeking the triumph itself. This puts him back on the time track. This is particularly applicable to old people. One hangs then on to certainties. The certainties are important. The uncertainties are important only in their production of psychosis. It is possible to take a sick animal and rehabilitate his idea that he is dangerous by dodging every time he strikes out, no matter how faintly, at one. It is possible to rehabilitate an individual who is very low on the tone scale merely by coaxing him to reach out and touch the material universe, and, touching it, to be certain that it is there, and, having touched it, to withdraw the touch and to be certain that he could withdraw. Certainty is a wonderful thing. The road toward realizing what certainty is has led these investigations through many uncertainties. One had to find out what was before one could find out what could be. That work is done. It is possible to take large groups and, using short 8, to bring them, each and every one, into higher levels of certainty. And bringing them into higher levels of certainty brings them into higher levels of communication. Communication not only with their own bodies, but with others and with the material universe. And as one raises that level of awareness, one raises also the ability to be, to do, to live. Today, this world suffers from an increasing incidence of neurosis brought about by a dependency upon mechanical things which do not think, which do not feel, but which can give pain to those that live. It suffers with an overdose of agreement that there is only one universe. So long as it believes that there is only one universe, that there is only one universe to study, to be studied, only one universe to agree with, it will continue to seek the lowest end of the scale, which is to say, that point where all universes become one universe. Where the triangle vanishes to a single point, it vanishes completely. And where one studies but one corner of the triangle and ignores the other two corners of the triangle, and agrees only with one corner of the triangle, such as the physical universe, one will tend toward that point where that corner of the triangle is coincident with the other two corners, and this is death. The curse of this world is not actually its atom bomb, though that is bad enough. The curse of this world is the irresponsibility of those who, seeking to study but one universe, the physical universe, try to depress all beings down to the low order of mechanically motivated, undreaming, unaesthetic things. Science, as a word, has been disgraced. For the word science means truth, and truth means light. A continual fixation and dependence upon only one universe, while ignoring the other two universes, leads to darkness, to despair, to nothingness. There is nothing wrong with the physical universe. One should not cease to observe the physical universe, but one certainly should not concentrate upon it so that he can agree with it and its laws only. He has laws of his own. It is better, far better for the individual to concentrate upon his own universe than to concentrate upon the messed universe. But this in itself is not the final answer. A balance is achieved in the three universes and certainty upon those universes. All control is effected by introducing uncertainties and hidden influences. Look how bad it is over there, so you'll have to look back at me. Thus, slavery is effected solely by getting people to fix on one thing. That one thing, in this case, is the physical universe. Science, so-called today, produces machines to blow your nose, produces machines to think for you, produces every possible argument as to why you should consider your body frail and unexpendable. Science, under the domination of capital, creates scarcity. It creates a scarcity of universes in fixing one upon one universe only. Those things which are scarce are those things which the individual has lost his faith in creating, in having. An individual who cannot create has to hold on to what he has. This leads him into holding on to what he has had. Where he has had a certainty in the past that something existed, he begins to grip it closer and closer to him. His space lessens, his beingness lessens, he becomes less active. The reactive mind that cannot create children has lost its hope of creation. It then can influence the analytical mind into believing that it can no longer create. The analytical mind, creating artistically in the messed universe, and not in its own universe at all, and not in other people's universes that it can recognize, goes downscale until it meets, on its own level, the reactive mind. And here at this level we find the enslaver, the person who makes things scarce, the fellow who uses his ethics, so-called, to enforce his crude judgments and to make things out of beings that could be men. Here, where the reactive mind and the analytical mind have come into a parity, we have the only effect that can be produced, the effect of pain. Where we have an active desire for pain masking in 1,000 guises, where every good impulse high on the scale is turned into a mockery, here we have crime, here we have war. These things are not awareness. These things merely act on a stimulus-response mechanism. Upscale is the high, bright breadth of being, breadth of understanding, breadth of awareness. To get there, all one must do is to become aware of the existence of the three universes by direct observation. Standard Operating Procedure 8. The basic technology of this operating procedure is to be found in The Factors, Scientology 8-8008, and The Professional School. In using this operating procedure, the auditor should give every heed to the auditor's code. Further, he should audit the pre-clear in the presence of a third person or another auditor. This operating procedure is best done by an auditor who has been thoroughly trained in all processes involving the reduction of the past and its incidents. The untrained auditor may encounter manifestations with which only a professional auditor would be familiar. This operating procedure retains the most workable methods of preceding procedures and in itself emphasizes positive gain and the present and future, rather than negative gain of eradication of the past. The Thetan, exteriorized and rehabilitated, can handle and remedy, by direct address of his own energy to the body and the removal of old energy deposits, all body malfunctions or mental aberrations attacked by older processes. The goal of this procedure is not the rehabilitation of the body, but of the Thetan. Rehabilitation of a body incidentally ensues. The goal of this procedure is operating Thetan, a higher goal than earlier procedures. The auditor tests the pre-clear for each step from step 1 on until he finds a step the pre-clear can do. The auditor then completes this step and then the next higher step until the Thetan is exteriorized. With the Thetan exteriorized, the auditor now completes all 7 steps regardless of the steps performed before exteriorization. He may complete all these steps and all parts of these steps rapidly, but they must be done to obtain a theta clear, and they must be done thoroughly to obtain an operating Thetan. The techniques involved herein were tested on a wide variety of cases. It is doubtful if any earlier process of any kind in any age has been as thoroughly validated as this operating procedure. However, it works only when used as stated. Disorganized fragments of this material, given other names and emphases, may be found to be harmful. Irresponsible and untrained use of this procedure is not authorized. Capricious or quasi-religious exteriorization of the Thetan for other purposes than the restoration of his ability and self-determinism should be resisted by any being. The goal of this process is freedom for the individual to the betterment of the many. Step 1. Ask pre-clear to be 3 feet behind his head. If stable there, have him be in various pleasant places until any feeling of scarcity of viewpoints is resolved. Then have him be in several undesirable places, then several pleasant places. Then have him be in a slightly dangerous place, then in more and more dangerous places until he can sit in the center of the sun. Be sure to observe a gradient scale of ugliness and dangerousness of places. Do not let the pre-clear fail. Then do remaining steps with pre-clear exteriorized. Step 2. Have pre-clear mock-up own body. If he does this easily and clearly, have him mock up own body until he slips out of it. When he is exteriorized and knows it thoroughly, the condition of all exteriorization, do Step 1. If his mock-up was not clear, go to Step 3 immediately. Step 3. Spacation. Have pre-clear close his eyes and find upper corners of the room. Have him sit there, not thinking, refusing to think of anything, interested only in the corners until he is completely exteriorized without strain. Then do a spacation, constructing own space with 8 anchor points and holding it stable without effort, and go to Step 1. If pre-clear was unable to locate corners of the room easily with his eyes closed, go to Step 4. Step 4. Expanded Gita. This is an extension of give-and-take processing. Test pre-clear to see if he can get a mock-up he can see, no matter how vague. Then have him waste, accept under duress, desire, and finally be able to take or leave alone each of the items listed below. He does this with mock-ups or ideas. He must do the sequence of waste, etc., in the order given here for each item. He wastes it by having it at remote distances in places where it will do no good, being used or done or observed by something which cannot appreciate it. When he is able to waste it in vast quantities, the auditor then has him accept it in mock-up form until he no longer is antagonistic to having to accept it even when it is unpleasant and great force is applied to make him take it. Then again with mock-ups, he must be able to bring himself to desire it even in its worst form. Then, by mock-ups of it in its most desirable form, he must come to be able to leave it entirely alone or take it in its worst form without caring. Expanded Gita remedies contra-survival abundance and scarcity. It will be found that before one can accept a very scarce to him thing, he has to give it away. A person with a milk allergy must be able to give away, in mock-up, enormous quantities of milk, wasting it before he can accept any himself. The items in this list are compounded of several years of isolating what factors were more important to minds than others. The list lacks very few of the very important items, if any. Additions to or subtractions from this list should not be attempted. Viewpoint, work, and pain should be heavily and often stressed and given priority. Next in importance are incidents, looking, sensation, talking, and knowing. Waste, have forced upon, desire, be able to give or take in that order each of the following. Order of items here is random. Viewpoint, work, pain, incidents, looking, sensation, talking, knowing, beauty, motion, engrams, ugliness, logic, pictures, confinement, money, parents, blackness, police, light, explosions, bodies, degradation, male bodies, female bodies, babies, children male, children female, strange and peculiar bodies, dead bodies, affinity, love, agreement, beautiful bodies, people, attention, admiration, force, energy, lightning, unconsciousness, problems, antagonism, reverence, fear, objects, time, eating human bodies, sound, grief, beautiful sadness, hidden influences, hidden communications, doubts, faces, dimension points, anchor points, anger, apathy, ideas, enthusiasm, disagreement, hate, sex, eating parents, eaten by parents, eating men, eaten by men, eating women, eaten by women, starts, spoken communications, written communications, stillness, exhaustion, stopping motion women, stopping motion men, changing motion women, changing motion men, changing motion babies, changing motion children, starting motion men, starting motion women, starting motion children, starting motion objects, starting motion self, omens, wickedness, forgiveness, play, games, machinery, touch, traffic, stolen goods, stolen pictures, homes, blasphemy, caves, medicine, glass, mirrors, pride, musical instruments, dirty words written on paper, in air, space, wild animals, pets, birds, air, water, food, milk, garbage, gases, excreta, rooms, beds, punishment, boredom, confusion, soldiers, executioners, doctors, judges, psychiatrists, liquor, alcohol, drugs, masturbation, rewards, heat, cold, forbidden things, God, the devil, spirits, bacteria, glory, dependence, responsibility, wrongness, rightness, insanity, sanity, faith, Christ, death, rank, position, poverty, maps, irresponsibility, greetings, farewells, credit, loneliness, jewels, teeth, genitalia, complications, help, pretense, truth, lies, assurance, contempt, predictability, unpredictability, vacuums, white clouds, black clouds, unattainables, hidden things, worry, revenge, textbooks, kisses, the past, the future, the present, arms, stomachs, bowels, mouths, cigarettes, smoke, urine, vomit, convulsions, saliva, flowers, semen, blackboards, fireworks, toys, vehicles, dolls, audiences, doors, walls, weapons, blood, ambitions, illusions, betrayal, ridicule, hope, happiness, mothers, fathers, grandparents, sons, planets, moons, waiting, silence, not knowing, fact one, remembering, forgetting, auditing, minds, fame, power, accidents, illnesses, approval, tiredness, acting, drama, costumes, sleep, holding things apart, holding things together, destroying things, sending things away, making things go fast, making things appear, making things vanish, convictions, stability, changing people, silent men, silent women, silent children, symbols of weakness, symbols of force, disabilities, education, languages, bestiality, homosexuality, invisible bodies, invisible acts, invisible scenes, accepting things back, rules, players, restimulation, sexual restimulation, space reduction, size reduction, entertainment, cheerfulness, freedom for others to talk, act, feel pain, be sad, thetans, personalities, cruelty, organizations, nothing. Try first healthy bodies, strong bodies, good perception, good recall. Warning: should your pre-clear become unstable or upset during this process, take him to step 6, then return to this list. Comment: the mind is sufficiently complicated that it can be expected to have computations on almost all the above. Thus, there is no single clearing button, and search for it is at the dictate of a circuit, the mechanism of circuits being to search for something hidden. Thus, your pre-clear may begin to compute and philosophize and seek to find the button that will release all this. All this releases all the buttons, so tell him to relax and go on with the process every time he starts to compute. Note, running the above will bring to the surface without further attention the computation on the case and the service facsimile. Do not audit these. Run expanded Gita. Step 5. Present time differentiation, exteriorization by scenery. Have pre-clear with his body's eyes study and see the difference between similar real objects, such as the 2 legs of a chair, the spaces between the back, 2 cigarettes, 2 trees, 2 girls. He must see and study the objects. It is not enough to remember the objects. The definition of a case 5 is no mock-ups, only blackness. Have him continue this process until he is alert. Use liberally and often. Then exteriorize by having the pre-clear close his eyes and move actual places on earth under him, preferably places he has not been. Have him bring these up to him, find 2 similar things in the scene, and observe the difference between them. Move him over oceans and cities until he is certain that he is exteriorized. Then, preferably while exteriorized, have him do step 1. This case has to know before he can be. His viewpoint is in the past. Give him present time viewpoints until he is a step 1 by the methods given for step 5. Comment: present time differentiation is a very good general technique and resolves chronic somatics and improves tone. Assume other people's viewpoints as a drill, not what they think about things, but as they look at things in the material universe. Attempt to be in the location of a leaf, blade of grass, car headlamp, etc., and view the universe. Step 6. ARC Straightwire. ARC Straightwire, using next to last list of self-analysis in Scientology, which asks the pre-clear to recall something really real to him, etc. Then use the lists in self-analysis. This level is the neurotic. It is identified by the pre-clear having mock-ups which will not persist or which won't go away. Use also present time differentiation. Then go to step 4. At any drop in tone, return case to step 6. Step 7. Psychotic cases, whether in or out of body. The psychotic appears to be in such desperate straits that the auditor often errs in thinking desperate measures are necessary. Use the lightest possible methods. Give case space and freedom where possible. Have psychotic imitate, not mock up, various things. Have him do present time differentiation. Get him to tell the difference between things by actual touch. Have him locate, differentiate, and touch things that are really real to him, real objects or items. If inaccessible, mimic him with own body, whatever he does, until he comes into communication. Have him locate corners of the room and hold them without thinking. As soon as his communication is up, go to step 6. But be very sure he changes any mock-up around until he knows it is a mock-up, that it exists, and that he himself made it. Do not run engrams. He is psychotic because viewpoints in present time are so scarce that he has gone into the past for viewpoints which at least he knew existed. By present time differentiation, by tactile on objects, restore his idea of an abundance of viewpoint in present time. If he has been given electric shock, do not process it or any other brutality. Work him for very brief periods, for his attention span is short. Always work psychotics with another auditor or a companion present. Note: all steps for all cases. If in doubt as to condition of case, test with step 6. Note: an operating thetan must also be able to manufacture particles of admiration and force in abundance. Appendix to SOP 8, Number 1. Any alterations in SOP 8 will appear in appendices as they are expected to be minor and to make no radical change in the design of the steps in general. Step 1. The operating thetan must be able to manufacture and experience to his complete satisfaction all sensations including pain in mock-up form and all energies such as admiration and force. It will be found that some Step 1 cases will not be able to manufacture admiration particles. Step 2. Be very careful not to make a lower step pre-clear while still in a body mock up his own body too long. Any mock-up will appear if it is simply put there often enough and long enough, providing the pre-clear doesn't spin in the process. The long-term manufacture of mock-ups of one's own body and of admiration may not produce quite the results expected. Communication lines which should remain shut may open with bad results. These lines that are shut appear like hard black cords to the pre-clear. There are two types of techniques in general: positive gain and negative gain, as defined in the above text. Positive can be administered in unlimited amounts without harm. Negative gain techniques, such as the reduction of engrams and locks, double terminaling, black and white, are often limited in the length of time they can be given. After a few hundred hours of early type auditing, the case could be found to slump. Thus we have in positive gain the unlimited technique, which improves the analytical mind. In negative gain, we have a limited, in terms of the time it can be audited, technique. In SOP 8, the following steps and processes may be audited without limit: Step 1, Step 3, Step 5, Step 6, Step 7. The following steps are limited and should not be audited many hours without changing to another type, unlimited, for a while, after which the following steps could be resumed. Step 2. Step 4. The following steps can be used on groups: Step 3, Step 5, Part 1 and Part 2, Step 6, Step 7. Appendix to SOP 8, Number 2, Certainty Processing. The anatomy of maybe consists of uncertainties and is resolved by the processing of certainties. It is not resolved by the processing of uncertainties. An uncertainty is held in suspense solely because the preclear is holding on so hard to certainties. The basic thing he is holding on to is, I have a solution, I have no solution. One of these is positive, the other is negative. A complete positive and a complete negative are, alike, a certainty. The basic certainty is, there is something, there is nothing. A person can be certain there is something, he can be certain there is nothing. There is something, there is nothing resolves chronic somatics in this order. One gets the preclear to have the center of the somatics say, there is something here, there is nothing here. Then he gets the center of the somatic to say, there is nothing there is something there. Then the auditor has the preclear say toward the somatic, there is something there is nothing there. And then he gets the preclear to say, about himself, there is something here, there is nothing here. This is a very fast resolution of chronic somatics. Quite ordinarily, 3 or 4 minutes of this will resolve an acute state, and 15 or 20 minutes of it will resolve a chronic state. This matter of certainties goes further. It has been determined by my recent investigations that the reason behind what is happening is the desire of a cause to bring about an effect. Something is better than nothing, anything is better than nothing. Any circuit, any effect, anything is better than nothing. If you will match terminals in brackets, there is nothing, you will find that a lot of your preclears become very ill. This should be turned around into there is something. The way one does matched terminals is to have the preclear facing the preclear or his father facing his father. In other words, 2 of each of anything, one facing the other. These 2 things will discharge one into the other, thus running off the difficulty. By bracket, we mean, of course, running this with the preclear putting them up as himself to himself, as though they were put up by somebody else, the somebody else facing the somebody else. And the matched terminal again put up by others facing others. The clue to all this is positive and negative in terms of certainties. The positive plus the negative in conflict make an uncertainty. A great number of combinations of things can be run. Here's a list of the combinations. The button behind sex is, I can begin life anew. I cannot begin life anew. I can make life persist. I cannot make life persist. I can stop life. I cannot stop life. I can change life. I cannot change life. I can start life. I cannot start life. A very effective process is something wrong, blank, nothing wrong, blank, with you, me, them, my mind, communication, various allies. A very basic resolution of the lack of space of an individual is to locate these people and these objects which you've been using as anchor points, such as father, mother, and so forth, and putting them into matched terminal brackets with this. There is father. There is no father. There is grandfather. There is no grandfather. In the compulsive line, this can be changed to, there must be no father. There must be a father. One takes all the allies of an individual and runs them in this fashion. The basic law underneath this is that a person becomes the effect of anything upon which he has had to depend. This would tell you immediately that the 6th dynamic, the messed universe, is the largest dependency of the individual. This can be run out, but then any dynamic can be run out in this fashion. There is myself, there is no self, and so on up the dynamics. Any dynamic is preventing me from communicating. Any dynamic is not preventing me from communicating is intensely effective. Any such technique can be varied by applying the sub-zero scale. One runs any certainty out because he knows that for this certainty there is an opposite negative certainty, and that between these lies a maybe, and that the maybe stays in suspense in time. The basic operation of the reactive mind is to solve problems. It is based on uncertainties about observation. Thus, one runs out certainties of observation. The most general shotgun technique would have to do with, there is sex, there is no sex, there is force, there is no force. This could be run, of course, in terms of matched terminal brackets or even as concepts. But one must not neglect to run the overt act phenomenon, which is to say, getting somebody else getting the concept. The processing out of certainties would then embrace I have a solution. There is no solution. These two opposite ends would take care of any individual who was hung on the track with some solution, for that solution had its opposite. People who have studied medicine begin by being certain that medicine works and end by being certain that medicine doesn't work. They begin by studying psychology on a supposition that it is the solution and finish up believing that it is not the solution. This also happens to superficial students of Dianetics and Scientology. Thus, one should also run Dianetics is a solution, Dianetics is not the solution. This would get one off the maybe on the subject. We are essentially processing communication systems. The entire process of auditing is concentrated upon withdrawing communications from the preclear as predicated on the basis of the body, and the preclear cannot handle communications. Thus, the preclear can handle communications, the preclear cannot handle communications, is a shotgun technique which resolves maybes about his communications. An intensely interesting aspect of certainty processing is that it shows up intimately where the preclear is aberrated. Here is the overall basic technique. One runs, there is blank. There is not blank. The following: communication, talk, letters, love, agreement, sex, pain, work, bodies, minds, curiosity, control, enforcement, compulsion, inhibition, food, money, people, ability, beauty, ugliness, presence, and both the top and bottom of the chart of attitudes, positive and negative in each one. Basic in all this is the urge of the preclear to produce an effect, so one can run, I can produce an effect upon Mama, I cannot produce an effect upon Mama, and so forth for all allies, and one will resolve the fixations of attention on the part of the preclear. Thus, fixations of attention are resolved by certainty processing, processing out the production of effect. One can occasionally, if he so desires, process the direct center of the maybe, which is to say doubt itself, in terms of matched terminals. This, however, is risky, for it throws the preclear into a general state of doubt. The key to any such processing is the recovery of viewpoints. I can have grandfather's viewpoint, I cannot have grandfather's viewpoint, and so on, particularly with sexual partners, will prove intensely interesting on a case. There are viewpoints, there are no viewpoints. I have a viewpoint, I don't have a viewpoint. Blank has a viewpoint, blank has no viewpoint resolves problems. One should also realize that when one is processing facsimiles, he is processing at one time energy, sensation, and aesthetics. The facsimile is a picture. The preclear is being affected by pictures mainly, and so, there are no pictures, there are pictures. Forward the case toward handling pictures, which is to say, facsimiles. A person tends to ally himself with somebody whom he considers capable of producing greater effects than himself. So, I, she, he, it can create greater effects. I, she, he, it can create no effect should be run. When one is processing, he is trying to withdraw communications. Reach and withdraw are the two fundamentals in the action of theta. Must reach and can't reach, must withdraw and can't withdraw, are compulsions which, when run in combination, produce the manifestation of insanity in a preclear. I can reach, I can't reach. I can withdraw, I can't withdraw, open up into the fact that remembering and forgetting are dependent upon the ability to reach and withdraw. You will find that a preclear will respond to you must blank, or you can blank, you must not blank, or you cannot blank. There is blank, there is not blank, forgetting and remembering. The only reason a person is hanging onto a body or facsimile is that he has lost his belief in his ability to create. The rehabilitation of this ability to create is resolved, for instance, in a person who has had an ambition to write with, I can write, I cannot write, and so forth. The loss of this creative ability made the person hang on to what he had. The fact that a preclear has forgotten how to or no longer can himself generate force makes him hold on to stores of force. These are very often mistaken by the auditor for facsimiles. The preclear doesn't care for the facsimile. He simply cares for the force contained in the facsimile because he knows he doesn't have any force anymore. It should be kept in mind that reaching and withdrawing are intensely productive of reaction in a preclear. But that preclear who does not respond to reaching and withdrawing and certainty thereon is hung up in a very special condition. He is trying to prevent something from happening. He also prevents auditing from happening. He has lost allies, he has had accidents, and he's hung up at all those points on the track where he feels he should have prevented something from happening. This is resolved by running, I must prevent it from happening, I cannot prevent it from happening. I must regain control, I must lose all control. Blackness is the desire to be an effect and the inability to be cause. I can create grandfather or ally. I cannot create grandfather or ally solves scarcity of allies. I want to be aware. I want no awareness is a technique which is basic in attitudes. Run this as others in matched terminal brackets or an expanded Gita. Certainty there is a past, certainty there is no past. Certainty there is a future, certainty there is no future. Certainty it means something else. Certainty it does not mean anything else. Certainty there is space, certainty there is no space. Certainty there is energy, certainty there is no energy. Certainty there are objects, certainty there are no objects. Short 8. This is a short form of Standard Operating Procedure 8. It can be used on any pre-clear without any survey of the case and will not get him into any difficulties and should resolve his various computations. This can also be used on groups. Just do the lettered steps in order. A. Next to last list in self-analysis, recalling something real, etc., until auditor is certain pre-clear has and can do so easily. In a group, ask for a show of hands the moment something real is recalled. Take those hands that went up in a couple of seconds and use them for the rest of this. Take the no hands or slow hands as a special group under somebody else and simply drill them on this step until their speed is well up. Then put them back into the main group or keep all in one group and go on. B. Examine and compare two similar meshed objects or spaces and tell the difference. Keep this up for at least 20 minutes. It can be kept up for hours with astonishing case improvement. C. Run wasting healthy bodies, then accepting them under duress, then wasting them, then accepting them under duress. Do this for 20 minutes or an hour until pre-clear or group shows signs of relief or amusement. D. Run next to last list of self-analysis for 5 minutes. E. Run duplication. This process is the basis of making facsimiles. Have pre-clear or group look at a meshed object. Then have him or them mock up a mock-up similar to it but beside it. Have the meshed object and the mock-up compared to tell the difference. Some people get none of the duplicates for quite a while, but will eventually. Some start making much fancier objects of the same sort. In any result, keep this up for 20 minutes. F. Have pre-clear or group close eyes and locate the corners of the room behind them and keep interested in those corners and not thinking for several minutes. G. Have pre-clear or group move meshed scenery under them individually, but at the command of the auditor. The scenery is, preferably, that not before viewed by the pre-clear or pre-clears. Don't let them invalidate what they see. This is exteriorization by scenery. Keep up for 20 minutes. H. Do next to last list of self-analysis, 5 minutes. I. Examine and compare two present time objects. J. Have one of the members go to the window and look out of the window. Have the remainder of the group assuming his viewpoint to see what he sees out of the window. Do this for 10 minutes. K. Start at beginning again and use list over and over. What they waste each time through can be changed to work and anchor points. Avoid pain with this short 8. Run healthy bodies for it instead. SOP 8C, The Journal of Scientology 24G, 31 January 1954. SOP 8C, The Rehabilitation of the Human Spirit. Scientology, the science of knowing how to know, has been developed for various applications in the field of human experience. Where it is utilized by skilled persons to enhance the personal ability and knowledge of others, the recommended process is Standard Operating Procedure 8C, SOP 8C. SOP 8C was developed after almost a year of observing SOP 8 in action, in other hands than mine, and after observing the frailties and talents of human auditors. SOP8C might be called SOP8 modified for clinical, laboratory, and individual human application. The goal of this system of operation is to return to the individual his knowledge, skill, and knowingness, and to enhance his perception, his reaction time, and serenity. It is entirely incidental that SOP8C is effective on psychosomatic illness, on human aberration, and social difficulties. It is not the intent or purpose of Scientology to repair. The science is a creative science. If the fact is that human illness, disability, and aberration uniformly cease to be because of Scientology, the effect is not intended to be primary, and the goal of SOP8C is not their remedy. Indeed, if SOP8C is used to remedy these only, it fails as a system. SOP8C succeeds only when it is addressed toward higher knowingness and beingness. Ironically, in using it, human ills vanish only when the auditor concentrates on the goals of the system and neglects the obvious physical disabilities of the pre-clear. In that one creates that which one concentrates upon, a treatment of illness which validates it in treatment will always tend to be unsuccessful. SOP8C was the subject of the Camden Indoctrination Course B, Second American Advanced Clinical Course, from November 16 to December 23, as well as the subject of the Phoenix International Congress of December 28, 1953. Specifically, the use of these processes obtains, when correctly used, without further evaluation for or indoctrination of the pre-clear, the knowledge that he is not a body, that he is a creative energy production unit, and demonstrates to him his purposes and abilities. This energy space production unit we call a thetan, that being a coined word taken from a mathematical symbol, the Greek letter theta. This is the pre-clear. One does not send one's thetan anywhere. One goes as a thetan. When a pre-clear is detected being in one place and finding his thetan in another, I'm over there, he is not exteriorized. To be exteriorized, the pre-clear must be certain that he is outside his body. An uncertain exteriorization requires more work before it becomes an exteriorization. SOP8C brings about a condition designated as theta clear. This is a relative, not an absolute term. It means that the person, this thought unit, is clear of his body, his engrams, his facsimiles, but can handle and safely control a body. The state of operating thetan is higher than theta clear, and means that the person does not need a body to communicate or work. It is accomplished with SOP8O. The highest theory of SOP8C is that the being is engaged upon a game called Physical Universe. This is a game requiring barriers, which is to say walls, planets, time, and vast distances, which last two are also barriers. In engaging upon this game, he has at last become so conscious of barriers that he is limited in his actions and thoughts. He thinks, in the case of Homo sapiens, that he is a body, a barrier, hemmed in by vast distances, barriers, and pinned in a time stream, a system of moving barriers, so as to reach only the present. These combined barriers have become so formidable that they are not even well perceived, but, from being strong, have become unreal to him. The matter is further complicated by invisible barriers, such as the eyes or glasses. In actuality, the thetan is a knowingness total in a cleared state, who yet can create space and time and objects to locate in them. He reduces his knowingness only to have action. Knowingness is reduced by assuming that one cannot know or knows wrongly. Knowingness is reduced by assuming one must be in certain places to perceive, and so know, and that one cannot be in certain places. Space is, but does not have to be, the first barrier of knowingness. With Scientology, we have the first definition of space. Space is a viewpoint of dimension. Given a viewpoint and 4, 8, or more points to view, one has space. Space is a problem of observation, not of physics. There is no question here of whether space, energy, or objects are real. Things are as real as one is certain of their reality. Reality is, here on Earth, agreement as to what is. This does not prevent barriers or time from being formidably real. It does not mean either that space, energy, or time are not illusions. It is as one knows it is, for one makes, by a process of continuous automatic duplication, all that one perceives. So much for theory. In application, this theory obtains results of considerable magnitude in changing beingness. The Thetan is continuously engaged upon cycles of action. The basic cycle of action is create, resist effects, survive, and destroy. This can be stated in various ways. Create an object, have it resist effects, survive, and then destroy it. Or create a situation, continue it and change it, and destroy or end it. When a Thetan leaves a cycle which is important to him unfinished, he tends to strive to finish it elsewhere or later in disrelated circumstances. Further, he can become overly concentrated upon creating or persistence, surviving, or upon destroying, and so form an unbalanced state of beingness. Time exists in those things a Thetan creates. It is a shift of particles, always making new space, always at an agreed-upon rate. A Thetan does not change in time, but as he can view particles, objects, spaces, barriers, from many viewpoints, he can consider himself to be in a time stream, which he is not. A Thetan's ideas, postulates, commands, beliefs, change. Particles change. The Thetan does not change, either in space or in time. Just as he is making an effort to do something he cannot help but do, survive, he is also fighting against doing the only thing he does, sit fixed in one position. The Thetan, to produce interest and action, operates as a paradox. He cannot die, so he firmly insists and proves continually that he can die. He never changes location, but only views new locations and constantly lives in horror of being fixed in time and space. Above that, he knows the past and the future and all of the present, and so fights to obscure the past and guess the future. Less theoretically, the individual who is processed is, at first, usually in the body and perceiving with the body's eyes. When exteriorized, placed 3 feet back of his head, he is actually out of the body and still in physical universe space. He can, exteriorized, move about and be in places just as though he had a body, seeing without eyes, hearing without ears, and feeling without fingers, ordinarily better than with these aids. This is not like astral walking, which is done by the individual who sends a body or a viewpoint to some other place and perceives with it. A Thetan is as much present where he is as if he were there in body. He isn't somebody else than the preclear moving dimly about. He is the preclear. He is there. At first he may be uncertain as to what he is seeing. This faculty becomes better as his ability to look, hear, and feel while exteriorized improves. SOP-8C improves this perception. Because the body only perceives what the Thetan is perceiving anyway, looking, feeling, hearing of the body are also better with SOP-8C. But this is only incidental. When a Thetan believes too thoroughly he is a body, he is generally unhappy, afraid, doubts his own, and validates the body's, existence, and worries about his inabilities. When he is out of the sphere of influence of the body, a very small one, he becomes serene, confident, and knowing. He can handle a body better, can act faster, can recall more and do more while exteriorized than he can while in a body. Society, thirsting for more control of more people, substitutes religion for the spirit, the body for the soul, an identity for the individual, and science and data for truth. In this direction lies insanity, increasing slavery, less knowingness, greater scarcity, and less society. Scientology has opened the gates to a better world. It is not a psychotherapy. It is a body of knowledge which, when properly used, gives freedom and truth to the individual. It could be said that man exists in a partially hypnotized state. He believes, on other determinism, in many things to his detriment. He will be as well as he is self-determined. The processes of Scientology could be described as methods of unhypnotizing men to their own freer choice and better life.